Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 6, 2026 meeting of the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners. We'll call the meeting to order. And the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Any community announcements? I think it's, yeah. And a couple of, maybe just one big lacrosse game on Saturday night. Yeah. Any other community announcements? Barring none, we shall move on. Approval of minutes from March 2nd, March 18th, and March 25th. Can I have a call for the approval of the minutes from the 2nd, 18th, and 25th? Thank you, Commissioner Hinch. A seconder, please. Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. Is there any questions, errors, omissions in the minutes? All right, we'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions?
Chair O'Malley, there's no additions or deletions from the clerk's office today.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any additions or deletions or modifications to the order of business? Seeing none, we will ask for a call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Commissioner Hinch, thank you. And a seconder. Commissioner Bezic-Escalera, thank you. Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carried. Thank you kindly. Was there any business arising out of the minutes, Madam Clerk?
No, there was not, Chair.
Thank you kindly. Conflicts of interest. Commissioners, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda? Barring none, thank you kindly. Considerations of deferred business. It's noted that we have none. And in terms of item number 8, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, is there any additional notes of correspondence that were received that we should make note of?
Chair O'Malley, there was no correspondence or petitions received by the clerk's office for this meeting.
Thank you kindly. 8.3, and particularly 8.3.1. We have several guests here today from the Department of Justice, and we will be receiving a presentation on governance-related subjects. And attending and presenting today are Charcy Marchand, Kurt Kamotsky, hopefully I said that right, Kamotsky, my apologies if I did not, Daniela Desjardins, and Catherine Shipton from the Public Safety and Security Division at the Department of Justice. So I'd invite you to come up to the podium and feel comfortable to manage that however you like. The floor will be yours whenever you're ready. And following that, would you like us to save questions until the end? Or how would you like to go about that process?
Your choice. Your choice.
Okay.
It's really intended to be a bit of a discussion focus. So if you want to ask questions while we're going through the motions, that might be the easiest, just to ensure that we're getting to your really detailed or specific questions.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I would just ask for commissioners if they feel their question might be a little bit more lengthy of a dialogue, that might want to save that until the end. But if it's quick points of clarification,
yeah,
feel free to ask the speakers then as we go. All right. Well, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So as the chair has mentioned, my name is Charcy Marchand. I'm the Director of Public Safety and Policing. Joining me for this portion of the presentation is Danielle Desjardins. She's the RCMP liaison to the Department of Justice. Further on in the presentation, we're going to first go through some sections of the Police Act and regulations of note to you in your role as a Police Advisory Board, Board of Police Commissioner two-hat scenario, which we're going to talk about. And then Kurt and Catherine are actually going to roll through some police modernization initiatives, particular focus on the police governance boards as announced through the foundational changes of the police review conducted last year. So as I mentioned, this is really intended to be a bit of a conversation if you so choose it to be that way. If there are any points of clarification as we move through the sections of the Police Act and the relevant regulations, please just let me know. What you'll see today in Danielle and I's portion of the presentation is really focused on the role of a board of police commissioners versus a role of a police advisory board, given that, there's a very unique circumstance in the HRM with integration with the RCMP. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and that's where I think perhaps where we may have some questions. So please feel free to jump in for points of clarification, but we're going to talk about the BOPC and PAB similarities. We're going to talk about the differences, and then we'll move into some priority setting and RCMP accountability mechanisms. So first and foremost, boards are prescribed by the Police Act, as you know. I hope that is not something that you're just learning today, but really what the Act does specify is that council selects both the council members and the board members who sit as part of the Board of Police Commissioners. It is often seen as a committee of council, although that is not necessarily the case, and we'll talk a little bit about the independence versus how council still kind of has managerial oversight. So we'll talk a little bit about that in particular. The board in this case, of course, as we've noted, does have some similarities between a police advisory board given the RCMP's involvement in the HRM. So we'll talk a little bit about how council can delegate some authorities to this board to do that. So council, of course, as I mentioned, selects the members, creates bylaws, and can further provide frameworks around the operation of your Board of Police Commissioners. Those cannot contravene the Police Act, of course, or the Municipal Governments Act, but one important point to mention is boards do maintain the sole jurisdictions over matters delegated to it. And when we talk about delegated to it, that delegation does have to come through bylaw or any other mechanisms through the municipality, through council. It cannot contravene the Police Act, and those, of course, have to be approved by the Minister of Justice as it pertains to boards of police commissioners. We do this for a few reasons, but mainly boards of police commissioners and council itself provides a framework for police governance that establishes the difference between police independence and police oversight. So you'll hear us say that quite a few times today. Should be no new information that the Board of Police Commissioners cannot direct Halifax Regional Police or the RCMP, but it can set policy direction for the Halifax Regional Police and setting priorities for both agencies through the course of the duties of this board. So as I noted, there are many similarities between the boards of police commissioners and police advisory boards, and we'll talk through those a little bit. Of course, there's a difference in scope as it pertains to the governance boards, but we'll talk about the similarities first. So sections of the Police Act of note, 5.1, the Minister of Justice will ensure the adequate and effective level of policing is maintained throughout the province. The Department of Justice does that in a variety of different mechanisms. The one that you might be the most familiar with, of course, is our brand new audit function. So the Minister of Justice has the authority to audit policing agencies to ensure that they're in alignment with the provincial policing standards that were set back in September of 24. As part of the announcement, of course, with the police review, the intention was noted to potentially amend the existing standards and add new standards. So that is one mechanism the Department of Justice can use to ensure adequate and effective levels of policing. Section 35.1 mentions every municipality is responsible for the policing and the maintenance of law and order in municipalities and for providing and maintaining adequate, effective, efficient police departments and its expenses in accordance with its needs. So this is where we kind of get into a little bit of your role as a Board of Police Commissioners in ensuring that adequate and effectiveness of your police service. Some similarities between the two organizations in particular as it pertains to the regulations. The board member selection process, as I've mentioned, so council gets to select the council members that will sit as part of the board. It also gets to select the committee members with one exception, and that is your ministerial appointee. That process is completely different and is outside of the municipality or the board's choice. That ministerial appointee is appointed by the Minister of Justice through the agency's boards and commissions mechanism. So this is very unlike any other board member. It goes through a completely separate process, and boards nor councils or municipalities have the authority to screen or pre-review ministerial appointments. Those all go through our agency's boards and commissions organization with the province of Nova Scotia. Further in the regulations, section 77 for the Board of Police Commissioners and 83 for police advisory boards talks about, of course, the qualifications of board members. So residents must, you must be a resident of the HRM to participate on this board and provide that oversight to policing. You must have considerable interest in serving the advisory board, of course, and having those intentions for that oversight and governance mechanism. You must have community knowledge, things that are happening in the HRM in particular, and having an understanding of how policing values contribute to that whole of society or community approach. And you must have a good character. That's always the funny one. I'm sure everyone here passes that test. And of course, the willingness to make the time and effort required to carry out the advisory board responsibilities, which we will talk about in the near slides. Sections 2 and 3 also talk about the criminal background check requirements. So you cannot be convicted of a criminal offense or subject to disciplinary proceedings reasonably expected to have a negative impact on a person acting as a member of the board itself. So very important to make sure that those criminal record checks are completed and are conducted on a regular basis. In addition to that, again, I hope this is not new information, section 79 and 84 respectively talk about the code of conduct for board members. So that does outline the expectations for members as well as mechanisms to address any code of conduct related issues. But in summary, the code of conduct is very simple and is very clear. You must instill public confidence in the board, which what really means is, discussing shared values, discussing shared objectives of the board. You're attending meetings, you're participating as a board member. You maintain that confidentiality if there are things that are discussed in camera, as an example. Non-interference in police operations. Again, I said this is something you're going to hear a lot of, and that is really critical for us to maintain that balance between directing police operations and providing that governance structure. So although sometimes we would like to ask the chief if he can, take a drive by our road or address one critical issue that's very personal to you, that is not an acceptable use of your board member duties. The last two is, of course, having no conflict of interest. So really nice to see that you have those on your agendas to make sure that those conflicts do not exist for board members. And of course, having the one voice. And Danielle will talk a little bit about the importance of setting priorities, both for HRP and for the RCMP. And really what we're talking about one voice is being able to socialize and converse about those priorities and ensure that the entirety of the board, the police services itself, are moving towards those priorities and you're able to articulate them respectfully. The other thing regarding the one voice is the communication with the chief himself and with the Department of Justice, which we will talk about a little bit further. However, just as a short summary, the chair is the only individual responsible for the communication with the chief or with the Department of Justice. Furthermore, within the Police Act, there are a number of different similarities between the structure of the board itself. So every municipality that establishes a board pursuant to section 36, 84, or 85 will by bylaw provide a board of police commissioners for jurisdictions with municipal police. Section 57 pertaining to police advisory boards indicates that you must have a police advisory board if you are served by the RCMP. So I just want to pause there for a second because obviously the HRM is in a bit of a unique situation, as I noted on the top, with the integration with the RCMP and the service delivery mechanisms in which the RCMP provides service here in the HRM. So although the composition of the two boards are the same, so if you are policed by an RCMP jurisdiction, then you must have a police advisory board, and if you're policed by a municipal police jurisdiction, you must have a board of police commissioners. Technically, you're policed by both, which makes you a little bit of an anomaly compared to anyone else. So what we're really hoping today is we can get to how you exercise those kind of two-hat duties, and we're kind of calling it that for a reason, because you are wearing a bit of two hats. But we'll talk about the differences as it pertains to how you enact those duties, although the structure might look the same and some of the authorities might look the same and some of the priority setting abilities might look the same for both the HRP and the RCMP. There are a significant number of differences that exist for you that you must be kind of alive to. I won't kind of go through these in great detail. However, there are a few things just of note. So each member must take an oath of office. And given that if you are going to wear kind of two hats at the same time with this structure, one code of conduct and acknowledgement of the code of conduct is fine. Section 74 of the regulations form 4 is where you'll find that. Nice to see that your Board of Police Commissioners is available to the public. That is section 51 and 65 respectfully of the Police Act and Regulations that talks about, what should be made available to the public and having the public actually participate in your meetings. And as the department who watches your meetings very closely, we appreciate your transparency in the videoing streaming of your meetings. Yep. Some do, yeah. So that is typically delegated by bylaw based on what's allowed from council itself. So the only anomaly to that, and you'll see on the slide there, is contract negotiation and security of police operations, which are obviously conducted in camera, separate. But some boards do, yes, allow the public to actively participate in their meetings. It's hard to share the perspective on good or bad things. A number of different boards do things differently. So for example, they dedicate kind of half an hour of their meetings where the public can share their input, or they provide just an open forum where anybody can participate at any time. It's really what works for the board itself. There's no kind of secret recipe, unfortunately. No problem. Section 54 and 67 respectively talk about training that will be provided to members of the board or required by minister or by regulation. Some of that you're actually receiving today by having a bit of orientation training, I guess, around the Police Act and Regulations itself and your role as a board member. So other training opportunities that we've seen occur across other boards, cultural awareness training pertaining to the jurisdiction or the population in which you serve, priority setting training, and Danielle will talk to you a little bit about that, and particularly around the memberships that we have that are open to you, and other training that's assigned to you by the council. 52 and 66, again, respectfully, talk about the board chair or the board chair's delegate. So this is what I had mentioned around the board chair is the sole individual who can put things in writing to the chief officer. And again, in your case, chief officer meeting Chief McLean or Chief Superintendent John Duff, providing that direction, policy direction to those organizations, such as priorities for the next year as a prime example. The key being that no other member of the board can give advice or direction to any member of the police department, and that conversation should occur from the chair himself to the chief of police. So this provides clarity and responsibility and provides that kind of direction setting from a governance and accountability perspective that communication should be in writing, again, only to the chief officer and provide specific duties, again, assigned to them by council. But we always use priority setting as a prime example. Your chair could write Chief McLean and identify the priorities for the next year. That would be an appropriate mechanism and provide that governance and oversight and accountability to the Halifax Regional Police. One thing of note, and we do include it on this slide, is we should always ensure that direct formal communication is done in writing. We cannot use meeting minutes. It's not suitable for providing that direction, although something may be discussed at this forum. And the clerk, sends the very detailed minutes. That should not be used by the chief to provide direction. It really should come in that formal writing to the chief himself. I think this is the last time I'll say it, but obviously maintaining that operational independence with political interference and making sure that we are not asking the chief to direct the Halifax Regional Police to do something very particular pertaining to police operations. We can provide strategic direction. We cannot provide operational specific direction.
Hi, Chelsea.
Hi.
So Chelsea, can you go back to this, the minutes aren't enough,
Mhm.
and specific direction?
Mhm.
Typically, if they're in the meeting and we pass a motion for a staff report, is that enough, which will be in the minutes, is that enough for the chief then, or the or RCMP to take some action? Or are we actually are required to send a letter as well to the chiefs about that particular, even though they're part of the actual meeting space?
Correct, because they're actually not a member of the board itself.
Okay.
So the chair should be putting in
different.
writing the request to either chief sitting here
Okay.
today.
All right, thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
So here's when we'll get into a bit of the differences, and I'm going to go over the boards of police commissioners and how it differs from police advisory boards, and Danielle will jump into a little bit about the particulars around police advisory boards. The biggest component of the differences between the two operational structures is the annual budget. So boards of police commissioners have the authority to collaborate with the chief to establish an annual budget for the Halifax Regional Police on an annual basis. We know that. I know you do that. The critical component here is that the board will ensure that the budget is prepared for council's review and approval. So yes, it could have been approved via the board. That still requires that added additional layer of council approval before it can proceed. The difference, which Danielle will talk about, is on the RCMP side. Boards, police advisory boards, cannot set the annual budget for the RCMP. Those financial conversations need to occur, of course, with the Department of Justice, but they cannot set an annual budget for the RCMP as a service provider in the municipality. Just want to pause there for a second if there are any questions. Does that make sense?
Just,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
just for clarity, because of the present billing model,
Mhm.
I think the board and council has the ability to say how many officers or units we want to, obviously subject to conversations with DOJ.
Correct.
So that equates directly to a budget line, but I take your point that you can't go into the budget and say, I don't like that in a budget or whatever.
Yes, and realistically, in other police advisory boards, that's not really a topic of conversation that occurs, is how many members, and other police advisory boards, and I'll let Danielle speak to this a little bit just on that side, but other police advisory boards don't actually go in and have those critical discussions and pass motions in advance of speaking with the Department of Justice because of the billing mechanism that you've noted. It's not a typical practice of the Department of Justice. We always collaborate with the municipalities first in conjunction with the board to ensure that it's supported on both sides. Chair, you look like you have a question.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to build on that a little bit. So RCMP will come to this Board of Police Commission to request additional funds, though. So be it, for example, Eastern Passage and the satellite office. That discussion happens here, or has happened here. Direction was then given to council. This is what we have approved. So that is a conversation about RCMP and budget. That's typically, and this, maybe that wasn't a great example, but typically that funding would come out of the municipality. Just trying to,
Mhm.
if you
There are
clarify.
nuances.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are nuances.
Yeah.
So, and that, to be quite frank, that is also exactly what the Department of Justice is trying to deconflict with the HRM in particular, because it is a very different model
Right.
than everybody else. It is a very different billing model. It is a very different relationship because of the billing arrangement that exists with the HRM.
so does the Department of Justice want us to have that conversation? Should that conversation be, that request come here and then it should go to the Department of Justice?
Department of Justice will be involved at any point in time, particularly around member numbers and billing. So that's a conversation that we can have around due process as we move forward. But it's critical that the Department of Justice remain engaged as members increase, particularly in the HRM, in advance.
How's that handled right now?
Thank you.
I had a question earlier, maybe this is the opportune time, but
Sure.
when you talked about the very front of the deck,
We have to sort those out.
5.1, the Minister of Justice shall ensure that an adequate and effective level of policing is maintained throughout the province. So in rural, we're on the subject of the RCMP. In rural areas, we might have one rural area of HRM which has 24-hour coverage,
Mhm.
and one which doesn't necessarily have 24-hour coverage and is covered by on-call. Where should that decision be made? Should that be made at the municipal government, the police board level? Let's say we want to expand the service to be 24/7, or not. Just where should that discussion occur? At a board, a municipality, or a Department of Justice?
The Department of Justice absolutely should be involved in the discussions pertaining, of course, to the RCMP components. If the discussions itself revolve around the Halifax Regional Police providing that coverage, that's kind of a different conversation,
No, I'm
but you're talking particularly the
specifically about
RCMP.
let's say a rural area
Mhm.
that does not presently have 24/7, 24 hours a day, police on the ground, but on an on-call basis. They could come out after hours, and it's
It's
RCMP.
RCMP, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Department of Justice should absolutely be engaged in that conversation as it moves forward, because that likely will lend itself to an increased resourcing need.
Understood.
So that is when the Department of Justice should be engaged. Again, Halifax is a bit of an anomaly, so I don't know how that's identified for you here, if that's identified by the chief to the board itself. But that's absolutely a conversation the Department of Justice should be privy to.
I
As it
guess I'm
pertains to
wondering,
resourcing.
as it relates to 5.1, where is there a standard where one community should have 24-hour coverage and one doesn't?
There is no standard that exists today around
Okay.
24-hour coverage. Those
Okay.
coverage responsibilities are the responsibility of the municipality in
Okay.
consultation with their provider, to deduce whether or not
Okay.
they want to sustain that enhanced resourcing for the 24-hour coverage.
Thank you.
You know, to build on that, Mr. Chair, I think that we may have to have some further conversation about that, because from a procedural point of view, I see this as a change, especially at a budget time, right? And you alluded to it too, Commissioner. So, I mean, I think we need to put a pin in this one and have some conversation, and they get some clarification, because very often there's an ask from RCMP each time, right? And that's prerogative to do so. We've accepted that. But how we engage that, whether it's coverage or whether it's an actual request for additional funding, we've done it a certain way. Could be the same. Yeah. Yep. So I think, you know, as a follow-up from today's meeting, I think we need to have a further conversation and then get clarification from Justice on
Absolutely.
this. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
So moving down to section 56, it talks about extra duty, off duty. So this is one, again, where there are some differences with your role with the Halifax Regional Police versus the RCMP, because the board itself can set policy direction respecting extra duty, off duty for the Halifax Regional Police. The RCMP doesn't currently have those policies for RCMP members, so I know that's been a conversation that Danielle can kind of give a little bit more detail on. But this is where it, again, becomes a little bit different, because you can set that policy direction particularly for the Halifax Regional Police, but not for the RCMP. So getting down to the function of the board itself. So I know this seems very, very short, and the board itself and the details of the board is much more nuanced than some of the, the words that you see on the slide. However, in summary, the function of the board is to provide civilian governance on behalf of council, again, delegated to it via bylaw as approved by the Minister of Justice, in relation to the enforcement of law, the maintenance of law, and law and order in the of crime in your municipality, i.e. the HRM. The board can set administrative direction, organization, and policy as it pertains to the Halifax Regional Police to maintain an adequate, effective, and efficient police department. However, the board cannot exercise jurisdiction related to complaints, discipline, personnel conduct, with the exception of the chief officer. Right? As you know, the board is responsible for providing that annual review of the chief. And through that, those mechanisms exist. However, you cannot interfere in discipline or conduct personnel related issues with any member of the Halifax Regional Police, with the exception of the chief. The board will not execute jurisdiction on a specific prosecution or investigation. Again, this is where we're talking about that balance of operational independence, and the board cannot provide the day-to-day direction for the police department. That is Chief McLean's job, and he does it ever so wisely. He paid me. He paid me. He paid me to say that. Moving forward, and then I'll pop you over to Danielle. So section 55.3 really talks about without limiting generalities of the subsection, the board will determine in consultation with the chief officer or the chief officer's delegate priorities, objectives, and goals pertaining to the police service in the community. And I do know that this board does actively set priorities for the Halifax Regional Police. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate that. That is the board's responsibility, providing that priorities, objectives, kind of that goal setting, what you want the Halifax Regional Police to accomplish in the next year, 3 years, depending on the term of your plan. That's a board responsibility. Ensuring that the chief officer,
Regarding your, the communication between the board and DOJ, when it comes to our strategic directions, we every year have a report that needs to go to council. So that report sums up our year, but also it reiterates the strategic direction. That would normally go to council as an information item. Should we be, as the board, be sending that to you folks, or does the do we count on the municipality to do it?
Thank you for asking that very valuable question, because what we're about to do over the next year is actually collect those documents from each of the boards to help inform our provincial
Yeah.
policing priorities. Historically, we have not done that. We had not collected those priorities or kind of summaries, I guess, of what the board had done and what it intends to do with the chief over the next year. We had not collected those prior to now. So we're hoping that this fiscal year, we're able to collect those from boards to help us inform our own provincial policing priorities that the Department of Justice sets for the RCMP. So it'd be very valuable if you could provide us
From
with
us,
that.
from the board to you?
Yeah.
And, okay.
Yeah, and a
acknowledging
formal
that.
request will be coming to boards
Okay,
to
thank
submit
you.
those. So
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
ensuring the chief officer establishes the programs and strategies that you have set for the Halifax Regional Police. This is primarily a police responsibility. Again, balancing that police independence in operation. You set the priorities, but Chief McLean gets to decide how that gets operationalized within his organization. Ensuring that community needs and values are reflected in those policing priorities that you've set for him and the organization. It's a joint police and board responsibility. So that's really where the chief should be coming and providing updates on every meeting or every sequence as determined by the board, and providing updates on how he and his organization are accomplishing the goals and priorities and objectives you have set for them.
I'm just trying to square this in my mind. So looking at number A, or item A, as it results to the budget then. So if the board is responsible for determining in consultation with the chief, the priorities, objectives, and goals, and there's dollars associated with those,
Mhm.
how do we square that then with the approval or the recommendation of a budget versus the approval of a budget? And I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
Let's say the new traffic safety law is passed. Or I don't even recall if it is.
Traffic
it did get
Safety Act?
passed, yeah. And the implementation of photo radar technologies. And the board does all the research and feels that that is a great technology. We should put in a program to implement that. And then council decides, we don't really want that in our city. How do we square those two?
Council has ultimate authority over the budget. So yes, the board can approve a budget that's established in consultation with the chief, but council has the ultimate authority to say yes or not at this time. So that authority itself lies with council. Now, if we're talking about alignments with priorities, objectives, and goals itself, so perhaps your goal, and I don't want to spoil Danielle's ending here, but perhaps your goal is road safety, and that is part of your road safety goal. If there are no dollars and cents attached to that, then the chief needs to determine how he's going to operationalize your goal of road safety in the absence of dollars and cents.
Just following that example, let's say the chief does decide that that is something that he wants to do, regardless what council says. Council sets the budget and says, chief or board, you've got X amount of dollars, and chief says, actually, this is a good program. I'm going to shuffle around the budget so it happens. because we can't give operational direction to the chief and because the council can't either, I assume then that means that the chief can basically, assuming that it is still consistent with the priorities and values that we've set out, can proceed with operationalizing a program as he sees fit, even if the council said they don't technically want the budget being used for that. Is that correct? Over?
So the council has the ultimate authority over the municipality, right? The funding itself comes from the council directly. That's probably a question for your municipal advisor with municipal government affairs. However, we have never been privy to that issue, particularly because budgets that are delivered to, we'll say, municipal police departments are itemized and are reportable based on those itemized lists. So we've never encountered that issue while working with other boards, because when the budget is delivered to that municipal police department, it very clearly details where to spend the allocated funding, in which areas, salaries, equipment, whatever that looks like. So we've never run into that issue where a chief has done that.
Commissioner Moore.
Yeah, just a little note, as I think most would know, we probably haven't run into that because the previous bylaw had a piece in it that basically council had approved that they would only look at the global amount. So it was a percentage. So we've not really run into, don't like that program, because that was disallowed by the previous bylaw, but that is no longer in the present bylaw.
Mhm.
So just adding that for context.
And I guess that's where I'm coming from, is that it makes sense to me that the council ought not to say yes or no to a specific program that the chief finds is appropriate or correct, if that is still consistent with the program, with the priorities and values. Like, that would be the council saying for political reasons to do or not do a specific thing that is within the chief's purview. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, continuing on, and then I'll pass to Danielle. So boards of police commissioners ensure that police services are delivered in a manner that's consistent, as we've noted, with community needs, values, and expectations. As you've noted and asked the question around, how do boards engage with the public? Is it during meetings? Is it particular areas? We've seen a variety of different ways. In order to really understand the community values, needs, and expectations, we've seen many boards host particular town hall sessions to get a better understanding of the priorities, perhaps, that the board would like to set for the chief that ensures that they are in line with community values, needs, and expectations, because you've heard it directly from the public themselves. The board acts as a conduit between community and the police department. The board recommends policies, administrative, and organizational direction for the effective management of the department. The board reviews with the chief officer or their designate information provided by the chief officer respecting complaints, internal discipline, so you can have that generalized conversation. However, the board cannot exercise that jurisdiction in the actual complaint or discipline itself. The board ensures that the strategic plan and business plan are in place, as we've noted. That's kind of underway, as far as I understand. And the board ensures that the department is managed by the chief officer according to best practices and operates effectively and efficiently. This is typically operationalized through the annual review of the chief, where you determine whether or not he, in this case, has effectively managed the police department in alignment with the priorities, goals, and objectives that you've set for him for that year or 3 years.
Commissioner Kent or Vice Chair Kent?
Yes, thank you. Can we go back to E?
Sure.
The board act as a conduit between the community and the police department. That has tripped the public up a number of times, because that, I think, implies that we have more authority within the department than we do. And we end up getting a lot of correspondence that's built around that. And so I'm wondering, just, is there an opportunity in the future to either tighten that or loosen it one way or the other, so that it is very clear to us as a board and to the public? Because I think that's one that trips people.
Vice Chair Kent, as you may or may not know, you're going to receive a presentation from Police Modernization after, which is going to
Yes,
talk
I know.
exactly to that point of amendments to the Police Act.
Wonderful.
So
Okay,
there will be
thank you.
lots of opportunity for you to provide that feedback through their engagement session. So sincerely appreciate that. And those are exactly points that we're looking for is areas in which have either tripped up boards or tripped up the public to make amendments to the Police Act itself to ensure there's clarity around the role of the board as it pertains to that community and police relation. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll pass to Danielle. She'll walk you through some of the Police Advisory Board functions.
Thanks, Charcy. Before I begin on this slide, I'll just touch on a few things which will just expand on what Charcy spoke to. So with respect to extra duty duties for RCMP officers, the RCMP would require a policy around that to ensure that any duties that it takes on are alignment with its mandate. But the key piece there, and I believe it would be something that may be addressed through the recommendations or the implementations of the recommendations of the policing review, would be to have a mechanism for cost recovery. Because as it stands right now, the RCMP cannot directly cost recover its services outside of a policing agreement. So that would be your PPSA. Therefore, if we use the example of security or road safety on a film set happening in the HRM, to use the RCMP and to have cost recovery, that would have to flow through the province. Secondly, with respect to RCMP asks for resources, I think that does still have an important place. And with respect to fine-tuning that process with the Department of Justice, if I use the example of other police advisory boards, oftentimes the RCMP does come to them and say, we would like additional resources for XYZ. We notice there's perhaps the service is not effective and efficient. We need more police officers. In that case, they would work or should be working early on with the Department of Justice to understand the implications, ensure that the service remains adequate and effective, and understand things particularly like costs. And then the last piece, I think it was Vice Chair Kent that mentioned if during a meeting there's a request for a report, that may not be that advice piece, that is really key to have in separate correspondence from the chair to the chief officer, because that's the priorities, right? That's not providing direction per se to the police, as opposed to say, can you provide us some more information on something, right? That's a little bit different. So I just want to make that distinction there, if that's fair.
Just a point of clarification. So we
Yeah.
do in our motions get very specific about, maybe directing the chief and requesting the officer in charge. And that gets reflected in the minutes, but that in itself is just really establishing the collective view, and then it has to be formalized in a follow-up letter is what you're saying.
If it's providing advice, that
Okay.
would be what needs to happen in separate correspondence. But if it's simply
If it's a request.
requesting some additional information, if it's more administrative as opposed to the direction piece, that's the distinction there.
And just to be clear, that's different for the HRP piece. So we have to send one all the time to the chief on HRP in a way that is directing. For instance, we direct the chief or the chiefs in some cases right now to prepare a staff report on this data space. And so are we saying that our report, our letter to them is just different? One is Chief McLean, we're asking you to report, create a report. Chief Duff, we're advising you to write a report. I feel like we're getting so far in the weeds on this one that.
No, I think there's one important distinction. So if it's a request for information,
Yes.
does not require the same level of advice or detailed formal request.
Okay.
Like I'm looking
Because
for
that's-
staffing levels. That doesn't require a written request. If you're looking to change
Okay.
the direction and or set strategic direction and or provide advice, that requires formal in writing. If you're requesting personnel numbers, for example, not required in writing.
Okay, thank you. Take that
Okay,
off the
so
list
moving
again.
forward, the primary distinction between police advisory boards and boards of police commissioners come to section 68. So without limiting the generality of subsection 1, an advisory board shall, oh, I'm on the right part here. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I had a slide there. Okay, so the function of an advisory board is to provide advice to the council in relation to the enforcement of law, maintenance of law and order, and the prevention of crime municipality. But particularly, an advisory board, so this is different from your Board of Police Commissioner hat, shall not exercise jurisdiction relating to complaints, discipline, personnel conduct, or the internal management of the RCMP. So that advice piece, we're going to further clarify it in the next slide. And then this section, 68.1, supersedes any references to recommendations or review by the board. So primarily, and you'll see it is very similar to the Board of Police Commissioners similar section. However, there are some distinctions here. So determine in consultation with the chief officer or the chief officer's designate priorities, objectives, and goals respecting police services in the community, a board responsibility. Ensure the chief officer establishes programs and strategies. That's a joint responsibility. I would say primarily police responsibility to establish, but it is that governance function which ensures the chief officer has established those programs and strategies. And then ensure that the community needs and values are reflected in policing priorities. That's a joint police responsibility there. Section D, ensure that police services are delivered in a manner consistent with community values, needs, and expectations. That conduit piece there, Section E. And here's where you have some additional details. So recommend policies, administrative, and organizational direction for the effective management of the police department. So this would be superseded by section 68.1. It is not in the board's jurisdiction. There is, however, an opportunity for input, but there's no expectation of implementation on behalf of the RCMP. Similar with section G, review with chief officer or their designate information provided respecting complaints and internal discipline, not within the board's jurisdiction, but the RCMP may be asked to share broad high-level information for awareness only, and that can be discussed, but it's not in the board's jurisdiction to kind of govern that. And then did you want to take those two pieces there? Okay, yeah.
I think we have a couple questions, probably. Commissioner,
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Mancini.
Chair. Thank you for that. So not within the board's governance to respond to disciplinary action within the RCMP, the board may be asked their opinion of something because that event, whatever took place within HRM. So, are there guidelines on what the board can they give their opinion one way or another? We're not involved in the discipline whatsoever, but the public will look at us as the overseer of the policing, including RCMP. So can we give an opinion?
Yeah, and I think there's always an opportunity for discussion, and that happens all the time at police advisory board meetings and board of police commissioner meetings. I think the specifics with respect to RCMP disciplinary measures, the RCMP code of conduct, the RCMP Act, what have you, those specific things, those would have to, they would want to ensure that they're not sharing anything which addresses privacy concerns,
No, of course not.
HR, whatever it is. So I think, this may also be an opportunity to further clarify things with revisions to the Police Act in the future as well, right?
A
So-
decision may have been made by the RCMP on that disciplinary situation. We waived it, or when there's a non-issue, or there was an issue, and that's shared here.
Yeah.
There will be some discussion here or opinion. We have no authority to direct. That's clear.
Yeah, and I think that falls under that broad, high-level information for awareness only piece.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Any other commissioners? Oh, Mr. Bates.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little bit confused about F because the Police Act states that the function of a police advisory board is to recommend policies, administrative direction, organizational direction for the effective management of the police department. That's in the Act, and then yet you're saying that if you could just scroll back, it's superseded by 68.1, which states, I have it here. The board shall not exercise jurisdiction relating to complaints, discipline, personnel conduct, or the internal management of the RCMP. So we're talking about policies, we're not talking about discipline. So why is that not in the board's jurisdiction if it's stated in the act?
Well, I think generally speaking, if a board would want to recommend policy, there'd be an expectation that they be implemented, whereas it doesn't fall under their jurisdiction. That's where we say there's opportunity for input, but no expectation of implementation, given the RCMP, its organization, that those changes may have broader repercussions beyond just HRD, Halifax Regional Detachment, right? So that's where, if you do see a gap or a policy recommendation, nothing stops the board from bringing that forward. And that's something that can then be brought forward to the RCMP by Chief Superintendent Duff. But whether or not there can be a push to implement that from the board is a different question.
No, I completely understand that. Of course, the wording is recommend, not implement,
Yes.
right? And that my question is simply that's in the act.
Mhm.
So, no expectation of implementation.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me that the board can certainly recommend policies.
And I think given that the language in this section is very similar to that of the boards of police commissioners piece,
Yeah.
but you're just essentially that 681 is intended to take some pieces out. I would hazard to say that's something that could likely be cleaned up through revisions to the act.
Yeah, fair.
Just had a question about resource again. So you mentioned that there's no mechanism for the RCMP to ask for additional compensation. Is that what you asked from the province, or is it the opposite?
No, it was the extra duty pay piece.
Okay.
So the RCMP cannot, for example, send a bill to a film production company for its services. So
Okay.
that would have to go through the province.
Right.
So with new billing mechanisms and other efforts, I'll pause here, that's going to take some time.
It is a scheduled test. Although I don't remember the announcement about the test. Okay, my question relates to extraordinary events, and I'm hoping you can shed some light on this as it relates to the provincial police agreement. So FIFA's coming up. Significant resource demands across the country. I understand potentially you could have very significant resource demands on Nova Scotia, with potentially even greater weight on HRD, given the number of resources.
Mhm.
What is allowed in terms of the agreement?
Mhm.
And what, as a board, input would we have in ensuring that the communities that might be experiencing a lower level of community safety, security, because of those commitments at a national level?
Fundamentally, as is the minister's authority, they would have to ensure that that there remains an adequate and effective level of policing service throughout the province, right? So that would be paramount. The contract does allow for a certain percentage of resources to be reallocated in what we call an Article 9 situation, such as a special event like FIFA. So there's close communication between the province and the RCMP to make sure that those numbers don't exceed that threshold and that there's an adequate level of policing services maintained. Adding to that while those deployments occur, the costs associated to those deployments are not borne by the province and thus the municipalities. Is it fair? Okay.
Hi, sorry, surprise guest. So pursuant to the PPSA, it's up to 10% that can be withdrawn for providing those functions across, that's my phone again, sorry, for assisting, but same thing. When we have a problem here, we need to invoke Article 9, we can withdraw up to 10% from divisions across Canada. For FIFA in particular, it's a live issue. We actually just sent correspondence to the Commissioner of the RCMP, noting the prioritization of public safety in Nova Scotia to ensure adequate policing resources here. We've received return correspondence from the Commissioner of the RCMP stating, yes, acknowledge that the priority will be given to ensuring adequate policing here in Nova Scotia. And throughout the deployment process, we'll be kept up to date with numbers. If we get to a point where we're feeling like we cannot maintain adequate policing services here, then that will be a communication to stop deployment. It depends on which resources are being requested to be deployed. In some circumstances, they are general duty police officers, which would be ongoing conversation. In some circumstances, they're specifically specialized resources or equipment. So for example, tabs, specialized vehicles, et cetera. It could be no people and send over the vehicles, or it could be send over emergency response team members, or it could be general duty, and that would be a different conversation. Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you want to continue? Okay. Two more things, and then Danielle will kind of jump back with priorities. But first and foremost, and one of the most crucial components is representation from all communities on the police board is critical to the success. We've established some guiding principles throughout the kind of orientation training that we provide typically. And we wanted to provide those here to you today as well. So the board will seek and capture opportunities to ensure proper representation from the communities that they serve are on the board. The board will be intentional about removing any barriers, either real or perceived, to participation at the board. So that is not only as a member of the board, but a member of the public coming in and having discussions with the board. Removing those real or perceived barriers is critical. The board will continue to create a safe space, which is free of discrimination, again, amongst board members, amongst the police service, and amongst the public who are interacting with either entity. The diversity training should be provided to board members to ensure cultural competence, and we typically depend on municipalities themselves if they provide the counselors or their staff with diversity training or cultural competence training to ensure that that's accessible for board members as well. So all of that to say, we've kind of summarized your role as a board member into 6 main areas. So first and foremost, abiding by the law, the Police Act and regulations, and other relevant legislation that pertains to you, such as the Municipal Governments Act. You represent your community in all spaces and places in relation to policing and the oversight and governance of police service. You provide strategic direction to overall community safety to the Chief of Police. You establish that the chair is that voice for the board itself. You remain up to date with changes affecting the police service and community. As an example, of course, changes to any relevant legislation and or announcements such as the police review or the policing standards would be a good example of staying up to date with changes affecting the police service itself. And last but certainly not least, you're here, you're participating in meetings, and you're voting. You're coming with an informed decision as well, again, from that community consultation that you may have done or those opportunities to seek public input. So we'll pause there before we go to priorities. Okay. Oh.
Okay, so we're shifting direction a little bit here. Same topic, but we're kind of getting into some of the nitty-gritty. So this may seem a bit like an oversimplification because I do believe your Board of Police Commissioners has a pretty fulsome priority setting process, multi-year plans. When we provide this to other police advisory boards, they're generally smaller groups with not a lot of support. So we really have to go into great detail on some of those processes to ensure that they fully understand their role and throughout the entire process of the function there. So really at the onset, it would be that community consultation piece. As Tracy mentioned, that could be town halls, surveys, just even awareness by speaking to your constituents, if you're counselors, to other community members for the citizen appointees. You're really taking a lot of that information and condensing that as part of the priority setting process. So there is, of course, that police consultation piece that may be socializing initial priorities, taking input from the police, such as those reports that may be requested from time to time to inform the board in their priority setting process. You establish your priorities. Following that, the police implement and action them as they see fit. But there's that communication piece, which remains paramount. They should be informing you on a regular basis, whether that's monthly, quarterly, as to their progress towards implementation and the goals that may have been set. And then finally, evaluation. So normally that would be kind of determined as the priorities are set. You want to know ahead of time how you're going to evaluate success. But at the end of whatever term is established for your priority process or strategic plan, whatever it may be, you would then evaluate, reassess. Do you still need to continue a priority? Are there new ones, evolving issues that need to be addressed? And the cycle continues. I'd like to spell this out, particularly for those smaller boards. When we talk about goals, sometimes they can be very, very nebulous, but it's important to kind of consider whether it meets the criteria here with the SMART mnemonic. So is it specific? Is it measurable, achievable, relevant, and is it timed? So to set a priority to eliminate all crime in a community may not be achievable. There will be some element of that, and when would that be achieved, right? So it's important to consider that, and really you'd be setting up your police service for success in that case. So as an example, road safety. Now, oftentimes priority objective and goal, well, particularly the priority objective piece, sometimes folks look at that and they could almost be used interchangeably, but we give this example here to kind of explain how that might be spelled out given the terms that are used in the Police Act. So through the example here is through community consultation. You've heard from citizens and even perhaps your police service that there's a lot of road safety issues, near misses with pedestrians, impaired driving. So you determine that road safety will then be set as a priority. So you would name that perhaps road safety with the objective to ensure the safety of all road users, and the goal, this is a broader goal, but greater enforcement of dangerous and impaired driving. I have an asterisk there just to say that a road safety priority, broadly speaking, for public safety, may be more than just what you ask the police to do. So as you would know, we talked about speed cameras, non-police initiatives such as traffic calming, speed signs. Those would be other things that, depending on the board's jurisdiction, could be contemplated as well. So the RCMP, to deliver on that priority, would look to programs and strategies such as focus on distracted driving, partnerships, evidence-led enforcement. Specific examples of what that could look like that meet that kind of SMART goal there would be develop educational material and deliver 6 presentations on the risks of distracted driving to local schools and driving classes by the end of the year. Targeted enforcement with partners such as MAD, DNRR, meetings with road user advocacy groups such as motorcyclists, cyclists, and at least 1 checkpoint per week at hotspots identified by RCMP data analysis. So I'll pause there if there's any questions. Okay. So given the distinctions between boards of police commissioners with respect to their governance of municipal police agencies and then the RCMP, it's important to touch on some of the accountability mechanisms specific to the RCMP, both internal and external. So within the RCMP, there's internal reporting, Chief Superintendent Don Duff obviously reports to the commanding officer, and there's expectations placed on him there. The RCMP also does publish a year in review that highlights priorities at local and divisional levels, which is made available to the public and stakeholders. RCMP members are also subject to a code of conduct and disciplinary measures, but as we spoke about earlier, specific details of those may not be shared. Body-worn cameras, a relatively new initiative for the RCMP broadly, but has been in place in Nova Scotia H Division for a number of years now. A certain level of accountability which it provides with respect to complaints and appropriate behavior by officers. Managerial reviews are the RCMP's internal audit function. So on a risk-based, through a risk-based process, they will internally audit its own units with respect to compliance with policy and so forth. And then we have the annual performance plan, which is the RCMP's own priority process. So at the Halifax Regional Detachment level, they would include priorities that are set by the board. However, they may include other priorities. Let's say they want to improve administrative processes or compliance with certain policy, training, what have you. They would incorporate board policies into its local annual performance plan. So externally, of course, we have local police governance boards, such as the Board of Police Commissioners here, in delivering its function as outlined in the Act. The province has its audit function of standards. A contract management committee, so that is a national committee made up of provinces and territories who receive RCMP policing services, as well as Public Safety Canada, who's the other contract holder for the policing agreements. They review mostly administrative aspects of the contract and issues to inform, costs and policies in conjunction with the RCMP. They do have a seat at the table as well. The Serious Incident Response Team, CERT, I believe everyone's familiar with that. The Management Advisory Board, which is an independent body which provides management and administrative advice directly to the RCMP Commissioner. And then lastly, the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP. I always share with boards that may not have awareness of the CRCC's existence that if ever a member of the public has a complaint about services they've received from their local police, their local detachment, we would generally ask that they go directly to the detachment to address that. However, if they're not satisfied with the response they receive or they're not comfortable going to the detachment directly, they can always reach out to the CRCC to address their complaint. Questions on those? Okay. I like this slide because it speaks to all the areas of priorities that are relevant to the RCMP, specifically in this case. We often hear sometimes the RCMP, because it's a national organization, that there's no opportunity for local input into priorities, when in fact it's through governance bodies such as boards of police commissioners and police advisory boards where that happens. So at the top, you have your municipal policing boards. They set priorities. And that is then fed to detachments and units. So Chief Superintendent Duff would take the priorities received from the board, address those. As I mentioned before, he may add to that, or the detachment may add to that with respect to local concerns at an RCMP level. Off to the other side there, Chair C had mentioned that future aggregation of municipal priorities to inform provincial priorities for the RCMP. So under the policing contract, the minister does set annual priorities for the RCMP. And so that may in the future be informed in greater detail by those municipal priorities. Those are fed into the division, and there's that interplay there between the detachment and the division. And then off to the side there, you have national RCMP. So if I take one example of a priority for the RCMP nationally, it's youth. That may not be something that is driving the day-to-day work of a detachment, but something that is always in the back of their mind. If federal policing is a national priority, that is not going to be something that is going to be driving the work of your detachment resources on a day-to-day basis. And then off to the side, of course, via consultation, you have other stakeholders. So they would come into play at all junctures in the process. So at the division level, they're consulting with community groups, just as your detachment may be and as your boards may be, as well as the province. I don't think this is as much of an issue for this board here, but we speak to it when we go to some of the smaller, more junior boards that are just kind of getting underground, so they understand the difference between the RCMP's annual performance plan and the priorities they are setting for the board. So the RCMP's APP, as we call it, includes police advisory board priorities, but does not replace them. There's, of course, that consultation and environmental scan that come into play. And then from priorities, detachment commanders are going to, of course, develop initiatives from the priorities, set measures and targets. develop initiatives and work plans for their detachment and those employees to deliver on the priorities. Oftentimes, detachment commanders will provide quarterly reports outlining policing activities to stakeholders. They're not just providing similar reports to the board, but to their line officers. So that would often be a district policing officer, but in your case, that's Chief Superintendent Duff. And then internally through the RCMP, that's also reported through their APP system. At any point, via the detachment commander, the board can always ask for additional information or education that will on specific police-related issues of interest to the board. So when we talked about those requests for information that may come up from time to time, maybe you wanted to know more about body-worn cameras as they were being rolled out. That's something that can always be provided. As well, the RCMP does offer tours of RCMP headquarters so that you understand the broader service delivery piece, that it's the RCMP in Halifax Regional Detachment is more than just the officers that are responding to calls for service, but there's a number of specialized services and resources available to support them in their policing service delivery. So I spoke about the CRCC already. I won't go into great detail here, but I believe everyone has a presentation, and so there's a link to their website where complaints can be reported. And I'll pause for any more questions for myself here before I pass it on to my colleagues. Yeah.
Yeah, just an observation. The function of the board of police advisory boards doesn't include language around ensuring adequate, effective, and efficient policing, which is, of course, applies to Board of Police Commissioners and is present in other police acts across the country. So I was wondering what your take is on the practical implications of that language not appearing specifically for police advisory boards.
So the Police Act does state that the Minister of Justice is responsible for the adequate and effective policing, like the provision of those services. The Minister of Justice has the ultimate authority for the execution of that work. Like I've mentioned, through audit, through those things, et cetera. There's an assumed responsibility of the delegation from councils to boards of police commissioners and police advisory boards to ensure adequate and effective policing services is maintained. So yes, it's explicitly noted through the setting the direction of the municipal board. That's not as explicitly noted in the police advisory board sections because the authorities just aren't the same. So the province itself, as the contract holder for the RCMP, is to ensure the adequate and effective policing services provided by that service provider, in this case, the RCMP. The province has the ultimate authority for that.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Shipton. I'm a policing modernization advisor with the Department of Justice, and I'm going to speak today to you a little bit about the work that we're doing with respect to police modernization. I'm going to set the scene, give a bit of background and context to policing modernization writ large before we dive in specifically to some of the work that we're doing around modernizing police governance boards. So the origin of police modernization does go back to the mass casualty incident of April 2020 and the Mass Casualty Commission report that came out of that tragedy. Specifically, there was one recommendation, P67, that recommended that the province review the structure of policing in Nova Scotia. That work was undertaken. It began in April 2024, and the final report was released in June of 2025, entitled Shaping the Future, the Comprehensive Policing Review. I want to highlight a couple of the engagement pieces that went into the development of that report. So there was engagement with justice partners, 150 in total, and that included frontline officers, police leaders, other public safety personnel, as well as board members. There was also a public survey that went out. It was live for 3 weeks, and there were responses from 6,700 Nova Scotians that fed into that review process. As well, there were a series of community conversations that were held, so 35 in total, with 240 participants from different groups, African Nova Scotians, Indigenous peoples, 2 LGBTQIA groups, newcomers, people with disabilities, as well as others. So I wanted to highlight that engagement piece that fed into the development of the Shaping the Future Policing in Nova Scotia Comprehensive Review, because there's, I think, a lot of good stuff in that review, and I would encourage everybody to have a look through that. What I will be focusing on are the outcomes or the recommendations from that review. There were 6 in total. They're entitled Foundational Changes in the report. At the Department of Justice, we're starting to speak about them in a bit different language. So we're referring to them as modernization initiatives because we think our language should be evolving as sort of our work to implement these foundational changes is evolving as well. So I'll quickly run through those 6 foundational changes / modernization initiatives that came out of the police review. Starting with a unified records management system. So the recommendation here is to implement a single province-wide records management system. As you may have seen in budget 2026-27, there was 2.6 million allocated for the Department of Justice to begin that work. The second modernization initiative relates to enhanced resourcing, so ensuring that police services across the country, across the province are adequately resourced. The third police modernization initiative is around layered policing, and this is essentially leveraging the existing special constable program to create a standardized community safety officer layer that can respond to non-complex and non-violent calls for service and perform other public safety functions, freeing up the time of sworn police officers to focus on core policing duties. The fourth, I'm going to skip over for now because we're going to get into that, and I'll move on to the fifth. Charcy and Danielle spoke a lot about the policing standards that exist, the provincial policing standards. One of the recommendations that came out of this review was to take a look at the existing standards. There are 39, how we can augment those standards, including through that audit function. That was the lessons learned from that audit function that was mentioned, as well as taking a look at what new standards need to be developed. And then the final recommendation, the Police Modernization Initiative, was to introduce a new RCMP billing mechanism for municipalities. So that's the broad context. Those are the 6 foundational changes that we're now referring to as modernization initiatives. And I'm going to dive into sort of our thinking, our approach with respect to the governance boards. Sure.
Could you elaborate a little bit about the special constable piece? Because that's of a strong interest, I suspect, of a lot of municipalities, but particularly ours. Could you elaborate what that looks like, what kind of roles they would be taking on? So, for example, for years here in HRM, because of the act, we would, events, the Blue Nose Marathon, the price tag, the act tells us they have to use HRP for traffic control, and that's a price tag of $50,000 to $60,000. Is that something special constables could take on, or could you give me some examples?
So what I'll say at this time is we're still in the initial phases of thinking through that program. I think in finding the answers to exactly those types of questions. As part of our process, we do want to hear that feedback, understand where those needs are, what are those types of roles that community safety officers could take on. I will say, as of right now, by law enforcement, traffic control, things of those natures are already public safety duties that are carried out by special constables. This would be about creating a standardized layer to help streamline that process. Right now, applications for those powers, it's on a case by case and an individual basis.
Okay.
So this would be about really streamlining that process, putting some kind of I guess corners around it, if you will. What's the training that would be needed for it? What are the powers that would be required for that type of layer? And as I mentioned, feedback I think will be key to informing the model that and the recommendation that we land on.
And I'm sure you'll be asked overall the time frame for a lot of this stuff, but particularly this, do you have any sense of a time frame when you'll have that overall, those layers and that more confirmed?
I will say the time frame for each of these initiatives is going to vary significantly because they're fundamentally very different,
Right.
one for the other. I will say for the community safety officers as well as the governance board, we are looking to really put our thoughts together and get something down on paper in the coming months.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Catherine. Mr. Chair?
Just had a question, if you don't mind. Under the augmenting provincial police standards, we've been piloting a sexual assault investigative case review process, and we're looking at having a presentation at our next meeting of an alternate model. I'm wondering if the province plans to introduce a standard in that area, and if so, what would the timing be of that?
I don't have any information on that at this time, but perhaps Charcy might.
So throughout the launch of the standards back in September of 2024, we kind of indicated at that time they were base minimum standards when we launched them. We knew we would add more. The police review further kind of compounded that. So if there is something that, this board feels would be beneficial, please provide it to the Department of Justice, such as a standard in this space. We're actively looking for spaces and places in which standards need to be created. We know that domestic violence, as an example, is one that doesn't currently exist on our list, but it's one that's becoming increasingly important for us to provide a standard around. So that's what we're doing right now. We're kind of in that collection phase to identify the areas in which new standards need to be developed so that we can work with our partners to create that standard itself. So if you have a suggestion, we would love to take it.
Well, I just wanted to, we have it on our work plan for 26, 27 to explore that, what a policy might be from a board level. I just wanted to ensure we're not offside with trying to continue down that path.
Yeah, I don't think you're offside. But if you have a particular standard in mind in a particular area, please feel free to provide advice in writing to the Department of Justice.
Vice Chair Kent?
I'm not sure if I'm jumping ahead. I just looked at your slides, but this is as good a time as any to update the board that part of what was referenced here about rolling out some change and work with consultation over the next few months is with the Nova Scotia Police Association of Police Governance. I'm the representative for this board on that, and I, along with 3 or 4 others, have been chosen to work with Kurt, and I don't know if Kurt's going to speak today or not, on some updating on some of the slides you're going to see. I'm saying this now because that representation is a really, really important piece. And in general, one of the things we fought for here on our board is the reciprocal side of the problem. The Department of Justice needs to know what we're doing, but we also need the Department of Justice to know what we're doing, and what things we could change. So you just spoke to it. And in the upcoming activities that I'm going to on behalf of the board, of course, I'll be consulting with the board on the things that they want me to take, but also I will be a representative of the Nova Scotia Association. Is there an opportunity for representation from each of the boards or advisory communities across the province? So I'm there on behalf of Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance, but would another opportunity be for someone else on this board? We're the largest municipality, and it just seems to me that I'm wondering who's making up that advisory piece that you are bringing together very soon, that Tiger team. I know it's a little premature, but I'm asking it because this is a really, what we're talking about right now is likely to be put on those tables.
Yeah, so Becky, forgive me because I'm surrounded by smart people. I'm maybe not one of them, but simplify your question for me.
I'm representing Nova Scotia Police Governance Association on the team that you've asked us to put together representation. Will that representation invitation also extend to a member of the board here and maybe others?
So in terms of the group that you're speaking of, that Tiger team,
Yes.
that's developed specifically to represent the views of the governance body, that Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance, through an agile nature, through a quick discussion, right?
Yeah.
So we're still going to engage with this board, and we're still going
Okay.
to have the discussions with this board. That the challenge is that the discussions that we'd have with the Tiger team will be fluid. They will be quick motions, and they'll be back and forth feedback. So we still intend to provide as much information as we can about the processes that we're engaging in and the decisions that we're making based on the information that we're getting. And we are still going to consult with the board in as many avenues as we can. It's just that because of the frequency at which you meet, and then of course because you have to have consensus, it may often draw that process out. So we want to be agile. We want to take as much information as we can, and we want to do that in an expedient fashion. And that Tiger team is one of those things that we can use.
And I'm raising it as well for the very fact that this is the largest municipality in the province. And often we're put in with one other, we're all on the same table, but our municipal board structures, our activities that we do and what we have, the volume of policing that we have is very different. It's the same, but on a larger scale. And I'm just encouraging you along the way to look at more representation from this board than you would necessarily from a smaller board in a smaller municipality.
No, 100%. And
Yeah.
I agree totally. And what I would say is that Halifax in itself is a case representation, because you have a unique structure. You are in a police governance model. You are wearing, again, like we said, two hats, really.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the functions that you have, and we'll take as much advice as you have, because you will have experienced both sides of the governance piece, right? From a municipal policing perspective and from an RCMP perspective. So I'm sure that there's things that you encounter on a let's say on a monthly basis that could shape the way that we're moving this forward. Now I'm going to get ahead of ourselves,
Okay,
but
well,
like
we don't
in
need-
terms of blueprint, I think we're looking at Halifax to provide a lot of information with our blueprints so we can go forward. And that, the blueprints that Catherine will talk about are based on research that we've done, the things that we've read in the report, all the jurisdictional scans that we've got to, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'll let Catherine resume with
Yeah,
that. Sorry.
and just to put a point on that fluid and quick and quick development, this all happened mostly last week in a bunch of emails going back and forth. So this is why the board is only finding out about it today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so just speaking about our approach to police modernization, specifically the governance board piece, there's a couple elements that I want to highlight. So we are exploring opportunities to update the current policing governance framework with a view to supporting consistent, inclusive, and effective governance across the province. We really want to understand, what isn't working, what is working. So I would say we want to build on the successes of police governance board models. We certainly want to leverage the experience and the knowledge of all of the board members, including yourselves. We do want to address the challenges and the recommendations that have been identified by various reviews, as well as what we hope will come in through the various feedback sessions that we plan to hold. And we also want to make sure that we're positioning Nova Scotia for the future. And by that, I mean, we want to be making sure we're moving towards a board governance structure that's going to serve us in the years to come. I think Kurt already previewed this, but it's worth saying again, active engagement and sustained collaboration with all stakeholders is going to be very, very key for us to be able to develop a comprehensive and a responsive governance board blueprint. And we're also very conscious that flexibility will need to be built in as we move this forward. We aren't looking to develop, a rigid one-size-fits-all structure. We recognize that municipalities are different. There are different models already out there, and so we want to make sure that we're leveraging that flexibility and building that in as we move towards a blueprint. I will explain what a blueprint is in just a moment. Before I get there, just to quickly recap, some of the core findings and core recommendations that's really driving our work forward. So from the comprehensive policing review specifically, there were calls with respect to enhanced transparency, accountability, and community trust. There were also there was a desire to see expanded civilian oversight of police governance, as well as increased visibility, responsiveness, and meaningful engagement when it comes to police governance. There's also a series of recommendations from the Mass Casualty Commission report. Some of these you'll see threaded throughout the comprehensive policing review naturally, because the Mass Casualty Commission report was one of the pieces that fed into that. But I'll highlight in particular recommendation P61, which has a series of sub-recommendations, but those really deal with elements of police governance in Nova Scotia and how to strengthen those elements there, including with respect to training for board members, how to ensure adequate funding to the police boards themselves, to ensure that boards are fully staffed and performing well, that meetings are open to the public, information is available online. Many of these sound like things you already do, and amongst some others. I will say as well, as we're moving towards our blueprint, we're also conscious of interoperability and some of the crosswalks with the other police modernization initiatives, specifically the community safety officer, the layered policing program. So making sure that as we're advancing our thinking with respect to governance boards, how is that going to fit with a community safety officer and a layered policing model as well. And then, of course, we are looking for best practices and lessons learned from other jurisdictions, whether that's across Canada or further afield. So the blueprint, this is really a tool that we are using. It's a development tool, it's an engagement tool. And what we hope a blueprint will do will help to solidify the concepts and practices into an outline of potential changes. So we want this blueprint to be able to facilitate engagement with stakeholders by allowing you to visualize what a new governance structure could look like, identify efficiencies, and potentially where some gaps may exist. Once all that feedback has been analyzed and incorporated into a draft blueprint, it can be used to assess what changes need to be made to legislation to deliberately build out the new governance structure. So really we want to use this as a tool to gather feedback, to help you visualize, to help kind of understand what an updated governance board model could look like. And again, really use that as a tool to gather that feedback, which would then inform a review of the Police Act itself. Just to add a bit more detail in terms of what the blueprint will look to address, here are some of the features that we've been thinking about already and we would want to see included, and certainly would like your feedback with respect to a blueprint. So we want to look around the composition of the board itself and how community representation features into that composition. So are there ways that we can build in measures to enhance public representation? Can we also look to include methods that would represent specific communities, especially Indigenous representation on police boards? And how can we ensure that boards reflect the cultural and demographic composition of their communities? So these are pieces that that we're thinking about and we want to see developed and built out in that blueprint. We also want to take a look at the board functions and providing strategic direction. I think it's come up a lot already in some of the questions as well as the earlier presentations, but a bit more clarity around what the board functions are, what the duties are, and how to align this with some of the other processes that are also sort of taking place at the same time, especially reporting requirements. Help to define what strategic direction to the police, to the chief officer, means, as well as building in ways to systematically consider community needs and data. I think that a lot of that's already being done, but is there a way we can shift that from aspirational or on an ad hoc basis to something that's structurally supported and structurally anchored? And then are there ways too that we can standardize and expand training for board members to really empower everyone to play that meaningful role in governance? And finally, with respect to accountability and oversight, we're also thinking about reporting requirements. Are there ways to standardize and harmonize reporting requirements so that we're tracking progress and priorities more effectively? Can we put in place clearer, practicable, and equitable dispute resolution mechanisms should a dispute arise that's not able to be resolved? And how can we also work to make the meetings as well as the work of the board more accessible to the public? So that is, in a nutshell, are the pieces that we want to see reflected in an updated governance board model. To get there, I'll come back to it, but engagement is really going to be key. So I mentioned timelines. We're looking to develop this blueprint over the coming months, as well as engage in various engagement sessions and consultations with different stakeholders. That's going to be key to making sure that we land on a model that's effective and sustainable. Just to provide a bit of color too around what our engagement is going to look like. It's going to be direct discussions with boards, with police agencies, with municipalities and other stakeholder groups where that type of engagement is the best fit. For some larger groups, as Vice Chair Kent mentioned, like the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance, we are taking a tiger team approach. And so for those larger organizations, we're looking to engage with a smaller subset of members so that we can have that agile and quick engagement. For some of those bodies that might not be larger, and that type of engagement will hopefully lend itself to really effective feedback there. We'll also look to leverage digital tools, different surveys that can be easily sent out online, as well as a monthly police modernization newsletter. So that's something that we're working on developing. Everybody is welcome to sign up, and that would be sent out on a monthly basis to provide a progress update across police modernization initiatives. And finally, we'll always be accepting written feedback as well as questions. We do have on the next slide, it'll be up on the screen, but we do have a dedicated inbox for questions, for feedback. So I would say, above and beyond the sort of focus and structured engagement, I would say that inbox is always open. And so that I want to end with this slide and sort of leave you with some questions to think about and hopefully start to generate the type of feedback that we're hoping to receive. One of the questions we're wondering is about the type of name that best represents the work that you do. I've been speaking about it as board governance or governance boards. Let's see if we can come up with something a bit more creative and fun. We also, would like to identify key contacts that we should be consulting, especially if there's consultation that can take part on behalf of other members, things of that nature. We want to hear from you what's working well within your board and what can be improved or what needs clarity. Which groups would you like to see represented or better represented in an updated governance board model? And do you see any challenges with having the same type of board for both municipalities that have policing is provided by the RCMP as well as municipal police? And then our final kind of question that I will leave you with is recognizing that public safety intersects with other sectors. How can these boards work with other partners without jurisdictional overreach? And on the screen as well, you'll see the policing modernization email that I mentioned. So please do take note of that. You also have copies of the presentation, but that's if you don't already have Kurt's number, that's how you can get in contact with us. Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Bezic-Escalard.
Thanks, Chair. It's a mix, I guess. Thank you very much, everyone, for the presentation so far. I think this it was nice to see the slides and put into writing some of the stuff that had come up in discussion on and off for the last few months, but now having it in one single package makes it easier to digest. I do think that writ large, our board is actually consistent with the stuff that you talked about in the Police Act and the Act's requirements, and more importantly, I do think that our chief and our chief superintendent have been responsive to the board for everything related to policy setting, and that back and forth and community representation is actually working here. So my concern or my hope is that what you had said about that there will be no one size fits all approach to governance is important to me, at least, because I do think that having that flexibility to basically carry on with a lot of the good stuff that we've been doing here is important. I think we'll probably come up with a formal answer to your questions as a group later, so I don't think we need for me to give some back and forth right now on that, but I guess all this to say, bottom line, I'm glad to see room for flexibility, because I think there's a lot of stuff that works well for us that may not work, admittedly, in other jurisdictions, but I think we do a lot of good stuff here that we would like to carry on with, so thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? I just had two small questions. At the very beginning of the meeting, you talked about criminal records checks frequencies. I got the impression, like, we do it when somebody's onboarded. Should we be doing it on a yearly basis? Is there a frequency here in regard to that? And then my second question was, this was a great orientation session. This board puts a lot of work in when a new member joins. Are you amenable to coming and repeating that, being part of a broader orientation for a new member in the future?
We will come back anytime. Anytime. Regarding your first question on criminal record checks, so two things about that. The board can determine when and how frequent they want to do that, and or the municipality may set a bylaw for staff and or municipal councilors as an example of how many times they should have their criminal records checked. You can choose to follow that bylaw. You can choose to follow those guidelines the municipality sets for itself, but the board can choose. We've seen boards do it every year. We've seen boards do it once a term. It's very much dependent on your willingness to conduct those every year.
Thank you.
I'd like to.
Vice Chair Kent?
Yeah, I'm just going to add one more comment. It's just for all of you. Thank you very much for all the work that you're doing on this. As you can tell, our board takes this all, policing and the governance and all the safety aspects of the communities that we're serving very, very seriously. So it's really, really good to see the outcome of that policing review and all the work you do. You're a delight to work with and on so many ways. Kurt, you've got a lot to get through, and we appreciate you being here. Look forward to lots more.
Well, I'll lean on all of you for sure, so it's going to be a shared effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted you to know that Commissioner Akindoju was listening intently remotely and texting me regularly. And so he's all up to speed on this orientation session.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for all your time and energy that you put into this presentation today. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break.
Yes.
And we come back and we go at the remaining agenda items. So
Okay.
Please note that it's 2:45, so that means 2:55, not 3 o'clock. Thanks. All right, we're moving on to item number 10, 10.1, Halifax Regional Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police Chief updates. And lo and behold, Chief McLean, your first name on the list. You have the floor, sir.
So good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chair O'Malley, members of the board, and everyone who's here with us now. And before I begin, though, I'd like to make an introduction. So I have with me, sitting behind me right here, is Deputy Chief Asif Rashid from the Calgary Police Service. He's spending the week with me as part of the CACP Mentorships Program. I think we've had a pretty good week so far, but I'll defer to him to actually say whether he's had or not. But things have been going pretty well. But yeah, no, it's been a great week.
You're
obviously.
mentoring him? Let's get this
Yeah,
straight here.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it works. And so interesting enough, he just found out he's going somewhere else. Well, since he's been here, in terms of where he's positioned in the organization. But it's been a great opportunity to sit down and talk with him, talk about a lot of our shared interests, shared programs, shared service. You know, at the end of the day, I was in Toronto the week before last, meeting with the Canadian Chiefs of Police. Like, there's just a lot of congruity in terms of what happens with policing across the country. Sometimes at different scales, but certainly very, very, very similar issues. But anyway, just wanted to introduce you to the deputy, and I'm sure if anyone wants to ask him anything at some point, you know, I'm sure he'd be amenable to it. And
He's about to find out.
Yeah, yeah.
That wasn't in the memo.
Yeah. So moving on, I also want to acknowledge that today is, this week is actually Mental Health Week. You know, police are often recognized for their courage and composure and all the things that they do, but we also have to recognize that they're just real normal people that live behind the uniforms. Obviously, since our last meeting, we've had a tragic death that occurred within our organization. And I know some of you were at the funeral. I unfortunately was away, but I want to thank you for that. And so this year's Mental Health Week obviously comes with a personal stark reminder of the challenges that face, you know, our officers. I always want to add that we do have a very strong employee assistance family program in terms of, I always try to encourage, you know, folks to reach out to them because they do an excellent job. We also had the opportunity yesterday morning, me and the deputy, to attend the Tima Foundation's breakfast, who do great work in the space around mental health and resilience. And today actually was their Tima Education Day, where over 400 people, including many of our officers, were gathered together as a means of, you know, talking about mental health and resilience and all those things that you know, help us do our jobs and come home better for it. From a recruitment perspective, it was a significant week this week in relation to our recruitment perspective. On the weekend, our cadets went out, started their OJT period. So this is the period where they get suited up and get teamed up with a field training officer and go on the road for the next couple months until their graduation on July 16th. So again, if you see them around, they'll have cadet on their uniforms or on their hats, say hello. And I had the opportunity to speak to a couple of them the other day on their first day going out. And, you know, so I remember back to my first day going out as a cadet. So in terms of, yes, Tony, I actually do remember. So, yeah. And but I also like to note that we also have a lot of work going on with our current recruitment process that's in the works right now for our next police science program. So it is a rigorous selection process, and I'm pleased to say we have a very good group of candidates, just like we have for the last couple, going through their interview phases right now. Segueing to the recognition piece, I know, and many of you were in attendance on the 17th of April, we held our very first retirement and recognition ceremony. And for those who were there, I thank you for showing up, because I do, you know, very sincerely believe recognition is a very important part of what we do. And it certainly contributes to having an engaged workforce. And we've put a lot of effort and thought into how do we make that a meaningful process. So my thanks to those involved in the recognition committees and the employee engagement groups. And so that was our April ceremony. We honored 2 retirees, presented both Chiefs Commendations, Divisional Commendation Awards. It was great hearing, the personal stories of bravery and dedication to public service. And so I will be holding these ceremonies on three times a year. And the next one is scheduled in September, and invitations will come to everyone. If you have the opportunity, please come out. Moving on to that, on Saturday in the same space, we will be holding a promotions. We'll be promoting 2 members to Sergeant Friday. Yeah, what did I say, Saturday? That's something else on Saturday. That's Police Week. So on Friday, we'll be holding a promotional ceremony for 2 of our officers, moving in sergeant positions. So obviously I want to thank them for their accomplishments. That's significant. I've always said, I think the first promotion is actually the hardest, like in terms of what you do. So I appreciate, certainly their efforts, everyone who's gone into that. And I appreciate that. I know some of you will be there. So I like that. From a major files investigation perspective, on April 17th, we arrested and charged a man for several child sexual abuse offenses. That search was in response to information we had received that the man was accessing child sexual abuse material online. 23-year-old male Owen Watson was arrested and appeared in court to face the charges of possession, accessing and distributing child sexual abuse and exploitation material, as well as making sexually explicit material available to a child. And on the 29th of April, we arrested and charged a Dartmouth man as part of a human trafficking investigation involving the use of violence and coercion to traffic a survivor. Jason Warner Lopi, 58 years old, appeared in Dartmouth Provincial Court last week to face several of those charges, including assault, sexual assault, and human trafficking. My thanks to all the investigators who worked on both of these files. They involve difficult and sensitive subject matter. So as we talk about Mental Health Week, like these are the things that actually have material, tangible impact on those situations. But we are fortunate to have strong members of our team working to stop these type of situations. I'll also speak to about a situation, obviously, that gathered quite a bit of, rightfully so, public attention in the last couple of weeks. On the 26th, or in the afternoon, we responded to a theft at the Superstore on Cooper Road. Short time later, officers located the suspect driving a bicycle, and the bicycle had turned onto Maynard Street, which is the street I grew up on, as a matter of fact, in terms of having to show the deputy where that was the other day. The bicycle, and they collided with the suspect, and then they subsequently collided with a power pole. The officers and the parties were transported to hospital. A second officer was treated by EHS. The male faces charges related to theft. At the time, we referred the matter to the Serious Incident Response Team, and actually we just found out this afternoon actually that they accepted the file, which is good. I'll hold off on any other further comments and then let CERT do their actual job in relation to that file, and then we'll have some more comment in the future. And the last thing I want to talk to you about was a robbery which occurred over the weekend at the Canadian Tire. Male stole a bunch of product and assaulted and threatened the staff with a knife. There happened to be an off-duty police officer in the store at that particular time who actually apprehended him. But that wasn't enough, because as they were trying to take him out and deal with him, another suspect showed up in a truck and actually hit one of the staff members trying to make him escape. At the end of the day, nobody escaped. Both parties were arrested. One at the scene, one later on, and a male, Devin Osmond, born 43 years old, and a Matthew McKinnon, 33, both attended court on Monday to face several charges in relation to that event. And there's one file then, and I think that Chief Superintendent Duff will speak to it more in length. But on the 31st of March, there was a report of a masked man outside a restaurant on Cowboy Road, which is in RCMP territory. The HRP K9 officer happened to be the first one on scene, and was managed to take him into apprehension in terms of he had what appeared to be a firearm concealed in his pants. He was masked. They believed it to be a domestic violence type situation. He was found in possession of a loaded rifle, ammunition, and prohibited magazines. So some really good work in relation from the K9 officer and the subsequent RCMP response. And we will be doing further recognition of Constable Simdur, who commend him on his work in this particular matter. From a domestic violence perspective, as I always speak to, for the month of April, we received 147 total reports of domestic violence. Charges were laid in 63 of these violence relating to reports of physical assault, harassment, and threats. Of the total domestic violence incidents, 13 were designated as high risk. And I'll always repeat in terms of high risk, it comes from a score of 7 or higher on the ODARA framework. Dolly would have spoken about that earlier when she was here, what that speaks to. And there was also a critical development in 17 files, which means that a file that had been designated high risk had a new incident occurred. So obviously, it points to that domestic violence still remains an important issue in our communities and in our society, in terms that we must continue to be vigilant about. From a firearms perspective, we've had 0 homicides related to firearms this year. There have been 8 shooting incidents and 174 firearms seized. From a traffic perspective, HRP officers issued just over 1,240 summary offense tickets over the period of April. There were 27 charges laid for impaired operation and 15 suspensions. And April is focused on speeding and aggressive driving. We conducted a speed proactive work on Highway 101 and worked with the RCMP on Highway 103 in the last period of time. I also want to note there have been significant, when I say significant, probably thousands of motor vehicle traffic points over the last, since the beginning of the year, actually, in terms of almost on a nightly basis throughout the divisions, in terms of resulting in SOTs, impaired drivings, and just overall visibility in terms of policing. And I want to thank the patrol members who are driving that along with their watch commanders in terms of the checkpoints, because they do actually contribute to public safety, I think. From a policy perspective, and I think I notified the chair that the use of force policy is now up on in place, which better aligns with the CACP use of force guidelines, the Nova Scotia policing standards, and your own BOPC use of force policy. It's available on our website. And to finish off, a few things from the community. I had a great time in terms of last month, and we had a young man come in and had the opportunity to name our police robot, Cam Mamie, who's 11, first met officers in relation to the visibly impaired Easter egg hunt we do along with the CNIB, where he became quite enthralled by our police robot, and he took an interest and wanted to name it. So last month we had a naming ceremony where he unveiled the robot's new name, which was Robbie the Robot, and happened to be his birthday. So Robbie was actually able to sing him happy birthday from the robot himself in an English accent. But anyway, it's all good. And but this type of thing, celebrating our bond between our police service and our community members are obviously, I think, something that's very important to me personally, and I think was very important to him. Another great event to note, on the 18th, both HRP and RCMP participated in the 8th annual Special Olympics Polar Plunge. I do believe Chief Superintendent Duff went in the water. I did not, but I spoke. So there you go. I was happy to be there and carry the torch and show my support. But more importantly, we raised $30,000 for Special Olympics Nova Scotia. And obviously, Special Olympics Nova Scotia and policing service across Nova Scotia have a very special relationship. And as always, would like to give my thanks to Inspector Kim Robinson for her ongoing leadership and passion that makes this event such a success, and as well as Superintendent Mosier, who actually plays a big role in this. And lastly, getting back to Saturday, it is National Police Week. So on this Saturday, we will host the Police Day at Micmac Mall from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. If you're around, come on over. I've been there the last few years. It turns out a good crowd and turns out some interesting things, and hope to see everyone there. And that's it for me. And I'll turn it over to the Chief Superintendent.
Thank you, Chief. Maybe I could just supplement a couple of the announcements you made, and I made note of them in the dispatch report that you had shared. But I can't believe I neglected to mention this, but obviously yesterday was National Day for Awareness of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirited Persons. that this is May Asian Heritage Month, and as well the Canadian Jewish Heritage Month. And that as well coming up, actually this week is mental health awareness. I believe you already mentioned,
This
mentioned
entire
Yeah.
week is, yes.
So, Chief Superintendent, floor is yours.
Chair, Commissioners, thank you very much. I'll turn that mic on, how about that? And I can tell you that the Halifax Harbor is cold. I think the water temperature is actually 2 degrees Celsius. I was not in very long. I closed my eyes. But, anyhow, so over the past couple months, we've had multiple community engagement sessions. Of course, it's important to connect with the communities, especially as we're looking at ensuring our priorities we develop are aligned with the community needs. I'm going to cover 2 months, so I'm going to cover it from a little bit of a quicker perspective. I'll just touch on our intimate partner violence. First off, in March, HRD received 106 IPV files, 36 which were deemed to be high risk, and in April that number was 100 and 25 which was high risk. So we always like to see a little bit of a reduction, but we'll see how we manage over time. Of course, with these community engagement sessions, we hear a lot about traffic. We continue to use various metrics for traffic enforcement. Our traffic unit alone, over the course of the 2-week period, conducted 1,150 traffic stops, 864 traffic tickets were written, 324 warnings, 95 ASD demands were given, and 5 impaired charges. Overall, is the detachment for the 2 months, the calls for service, overall, it was an increase compared to March of last year by 1,434. Our number of our SOTs was increased 660. Our traffic stops went up 596. And our impaired numbers for March 2025 and March 2026, I don't have April's yet, were consistent, which is good news. So the elevated enforcement is hopefully holding the impaireds to a level. We'll see over the next few months where those numbers, if they continue along that way. Just a couple of highlighted files. On March 16th at 9:30, RCMP and HRP with EHS and fire service responded to report of a collision on Pleasant Street in Shearwater. It involved a stolen vehicle and with 4 youths in it and a pickup truck. The youths were from Truro. No serious injuries, but the 4 youths were taken into custody and everybody was seen and released. But it just goes to show the teamwork again. It knows no lines in that when HRP and HRD, when something's going on, they work together. There's multiple highlights of this. March 24th, officers responded to calls for assistance on Breckenridge Lane. First call, a woman arrived at a nearby residence reporting she'd been assaulted by a man who also had damaged a truck. Moments later, second 911 call was received from the same area, line disconnected. Ultimately, a man had assaulted a woman, crashed the truck and uttered threats. RCMP Police Dog Services, Halifax Regional Police, and remotely piloted aircraft system assisted in the search, able to locate the male and take him into custody. Another successful use of teamwork and some technology there. Ultimately, the male was charged with assault with a weapon, utter threats, mischief, failed to comply with release order, take motor vehicle without consent, and resisting arrest. Over the period of 24 hours, there was 4 specific files where 4 impaired drivers were located during the driver prevention week. So success there by elevating that presence on the road and being diligent in the road safety, which, as I mentioned, we hear at basically every community engagement session we have. 6, over the period of 10 days, we had 6 phone fraud files reported with a sum of $365,000 being lost by the complainants. The files were taken and compiled. The largest one included was a victim from Middle Sackville lost $300,000 after forming a personal relationship with someone on Facebook who claimed to be going through tough times, gained the victim's trust, and used a story of an ill family member with medical expensive costs, and was able to fraudulently obtain $300,000. So again, it just highlights the fact that we have to be so diligent in there, and it's going to form part of our priorities to do some community notices in that. I mean, it's so sad, and it's often targeting old elderly people in the community who are maybe not quite as tech savvy as someone like I would say myself, but that wouldn't be the case at all. As the younger generation, they're much more used to the internet and those type of things. I'll just touch quickly on the file that the Chief McLean mentioned. Again, really, the teamwork and that call of the individual on Cal Bay Road, it was a case of IPV. Thank goodness the HRP K9 unit was close by, was there very quickly. Cole Harbour members were there shortly thereafter. I won't get into too many details, but I'll just sort of the list of that incident that the charges that resulted were 5 counts of unauthorized possession of a firearm, possession of a prohibited device, 3 counts, possession of a firearm knowing it's unauthorized, 5 counts, possession of restricted or prohibited firearm with ammunition, 2 counts, possession of firearm obtained by commission of offense, 5 counts, possession of firearm knowing the serial number had been altered, defaced, or removed, possession contrary to court order, failure to comply with youth order, unsafe storage contrary to regulations, unauthorized possession of a prohibited device, criminal harassment disguised with intent, and resist arrest. So, like I said, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but thank goodness that HRP member was there so quick, and credit to him. I had a fortunate to meet him and have a little conversation and thank him. Just excellent work. On April 25th, at 3:55 a.m., RCMP officers, EHS, and Halifax Regional Fire responded to a report of a structure fire at a residence on Manor Drive. Upon arrival, officers attempted to enter the home. However, conditions were too intense due to smoke. Halifax Fire arrived, began suppressing the fire, and entered the residence. Halifax Regional Fire removed 3 adults from the home. So this was in the news, very, very sad. As a result of that fire, there was three deceased individuals. Investigation is continuing. Appears to potentially have been accidental cause. So very, very sad. And again, another case where the officers who responded are being given the supports with all our services available, because as we know, those things do have impact. And barring any questions, that's my report covering the highlights of the last 2 months.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. Any questions for the chiefs? Commissioner Mancini or Commissioner Carter, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you very much for those reports, and please thank all of your officers that are on the street for the things they've done. I did attend the funeral of your officer chief, and my condolences, and hopefully all the members of the department are okay, because that's never easy for them. So, just also, both of you led to some details about seizing firearms and the particular offense that you just described. And again, thank you, because those are the firearms that public safety and safe communities is most concerned about. Firearms in the hands of criminals, used in offenses, and not properly looked after, unlicensed, and so on. So just for clarification on that, is the stats on seized firearms, does that include the gun buyback firearms, or these are strictly non-licensed or mostly non-licensed people that have used them in offenses, or criminals that have them?
The numbers I provided in respect to any firearms aren't part of the buyback program.
Yeah, same.
Same thing? Yeah, okay. I was just for clarification. I was looking for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Mancini.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you both for the presentations, and thank you both for reporting on domestic violence and intimate partner violence stats each time we meet. I appreciate that. I'm wondering in the future, Chief McLean, if we can, similar to what the Chief Superintendent did, it'd be nice to have a range of numbers. Are we increasing or decreasing when it comes to the reporting of domestic violence? You mentioned 147 reports. I'd be curious, even year to date, how's that in comparison to last year? Those types of things. You may not have that at your fingertips now. That's fine. I'm just wondering in the future, just so that we can identify, our numbers. You alluded to it a little bit, the Chief Superintendent, the numbers, going up or going down. So I think that'd be important. But I think it's also very important that we continue to pull those out of all the policing activity that's going on, so that we're aware of it. So I appreciate both of you doing that. Also appreciate the Chief McLean. It sounds like the increased traffic patrol and the work being done. I was not far from where I lived the other day. I returned home. There was a checkpoint on Waverly Road, high visibility, and that's what our residents want. They want to see our folks out there. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Commissioner Hinch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chiefs, for the report. I just wanted to say thanks to Chief McLean for bringing up the incident on Maynard Street. I have received a few emails with regards to that. And, they're complaining of excessive force and things of that nature. So I'm glad it's with certs at this point. So thank you.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalor.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you both for the update today. The only thing I wanted to add from the other commissioners who have spoken is to highlight the work that, or to thank you for the work done by your officer who is off duty. I think sometimes that's one of the areas in the public that often isn't well appreciated, that police officers are on 24/7 even when off duty, and they step up when situations arise. So thanks in particular for that. I also mentioned the traffic side. I do keep my own stats based on what you present in terms of traffic stops and tickets. So I'll note that Chief McLean, you had mentioned 1,240 tickets in April. The last few months, we were looking at around 700 to 900, so that is an increase. So it does look like the traffic unit, now that it is fully staffed, as you had mentioned in previous update, is bearing fruit. So thank you for that.
And to that point, like when it comes to traffic stop numbers, like a checkpoint, you'll chop hundreds of cars. They will never be numbered as 100 traffic stops, just because one checkpoint is, that's like, so when I say thousands, I mean that there's actually thousands. And the one other thing I wanted to mention in terms of, and John highlighted for me when he was talking about the frauds, particularly with the elderly folks, the deputy had the chance to come with me on Monday to we had a senior citizens academy graduation in the west end of the city, and I was able to give out the certificates for it. And the room was packed, probably about 50 participants. They said they had to stop accepting people. Ran for like 4 or 5 weeks. And one of the educational components was on fraud awareness. And it was probably the first one actually in terms of, so I think that's obviously very important in terms of, educating our folks. Thank you.
All right, and I would note that my father grew up on Maynard Street, so there are some roots there. Perhaps your dad and my dad chummed around together. Okay, we're going to move on to 10.2, community safety update. Rachel, would you like to share with us your thoughts on activities over the last little while?
Okay, I think it is now. I'm happy to say that the integration with our crisis assistance and response team with police and IES is now complete. So as well, the service had capacity to expand and is now inclusive of the area between the bridges and Roby Street in Halifax, all of which is allowing the teams to reach increased numbers of citizens. So that's good news. And we'll speak a little bit more about care in the public safety strategy update. So I'll leave that for now. I also wanted to bring up some recent stats with the homelessness work. As I discussed, I think late last fall, we are now integrated with provincially endorsed data collection tools. So that allows us to report on some of our statistics around connecting people with shelter and housing options. So between January and March of this year, 2026, our coordinators supported individuals in accessing indoor shelter options approximately 16 times, and successfully assisted 9 individuals in accessing housing opportunities. So that would be distinguishing between more permanent forms of housing and short-term. And between January 1 and March 31, staff responded to severe weather events on 10 occasions, ensuring that people sleeping rough were offered opportunities to go indoors, or for individuals who wouldn't go indoors, that they were kept safe. And just to note that those statistics don't include the number of individuals whose files may have been already created by another service provider. So if someone already has a file in the HIFA system and we were successfully the ones that liaison and connected them to service, those wouldn't be reflected there. And that is often the case because we strive not to create any duplicate files. As well, I wanted to note that our team during that same time period responded to 17 individuals in prohibited locations where individuals were sheltering. I think that's an important number for this board to be aware of, because in the past, prior to this work being in place, police would often have been called to assist those individuals and may not have had the access to bridge them to housing or other forms of supports in the way that our outreach teams do. So that concludes my report today, and we'll be sharing some more information about the update on the strategy.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions, Mr. Mancini?
Thank you, Rachel. Sorry, did you state the numbers of folks that are living rough right now, or is that going to be shared later on? If it's going to be shared later on, that's okay.
Councilor Mancini, Acting Director of Housing and Homelessness, Ashton here. Currently, the numbers are about 23 people in designated sites and about 20 to 25 approximately in non-designated prohibited locations.
Okay, thank you for that. So weather hopefully getting better. So the fear is also we may see more folks that are sheltering and leave and go outside. Is that correct? So is there a strategy to address that scenario, that anticipated increased numbers?
Yeah, we're over the last few years, there's always been a spike over the summer. We have been monitoring numbers. Currently, the encampments are sufficient. The 2 remaining encampments are sufficient for the volumes that we do have. But our plan would be to continue to do what we're doing with an intensive housing focus. If the encampments become overwhelmed, it will just definitely even prioritize that work more. There are vacancies in the system every day, so we're confident that we can manage the volumes that we're expecting this summer. And we are hopeful that the spike may be reduced from previous summers, given the numbers that we're seeing overall in encampments.
One follow-up, if I may. So on the vacancy, I think I did my math right here. There's 48 people that are living rough. If all 48 chose to go inside somewhere, is there a place for them? Now, I know there are issues around that. Some can't and some don't want to and all that, but is there actual space for 48 people if they chose to?
Often the numbers align, but whether there are 2 factors,
Right.
There are beds and there are individuals. but do the beds meet the individual
Understand
needs
that. Yeah,
and
yeah.
preferences and values of each person? So that's a more difficult, and it really does come down to a very individualized one-on-one approach to match people with suitable housing. If they're matched in suitable housing, they're likely it's not going to work, and they'll be back in the encampment shortly. So
Yeah, I understand that, and I didn't mean to simplify that. The reason I was asking that is, we hear our friends from the Department of Justice say they pay attention to this meeting. There may be others from the province paying attention. So what is needed here is more supports for those people that don't fit those places. We also need more supports for mental health and addictions, right, to address those. And primarily, a lot of those folks are fall in that category. Not everyone, but that's the reason I bring it up. I didn't want to simplify it. Thank you guys for that work. Really important work.
Commissioner Hinch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update. I just wanted to mention, the work that you guys do is it's incredibly difficult. And I just want to say that, a couple days ago, I received a call from a person that just got recently housed and how grateful they were. And I just want to say kudos and great job that you guys are doing. You guys are continuing to do this hard work, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you.
thank you so much. It is difficult work for our frontline staff, and even to the point where there's sometimes moral injury because you're working with people and it's just you can't find a solution, for people who have really serious needs. So the successes are so important. They often don't get to hear those thank yous, and when they come, it's very meaningful to them. So thank you for sharing.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalera.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. I'll add my thanks as well to Commissioner Hinch's. What jumped out to me in your report, especially after the follow-up that Commissioner Mancini asked, so about 40 persons living rough, and you had housed 9 in the last in this reporting period. That seems like a large proportion of people who were successful, or at least so far have been successfully housed. So the work involved in that, I know 9 out of 40-ish is the number, but each one of those is a real win, as Commissioner Hinch had suggested. So thanks for that work. The other thing that jumped out to me was the number of persons that you responded to without needing police, which I think is exactly what we had been pushing for in the detasking. We all around the table, we're looking for to see that sort of shift happen. I do have a follow-on question to that, though. In the experience from other jurisdictions, such as Ottawa or Toronto, that have a similar response program, they did still have to involve police. I think it was around 10% of the time in some of these non-police responses. Do you have a number that you can quote that might?
Since we
see
do
for
have
that?
Ashton here today, I'm going to ask him to take this question because, he'd have a better.
Thanks for your question. We don't have a number, but I would say majority of the time people comply with our compliance officers and our outreach team, and very few we have to involve police, specifically like on private property where we don't have any grounds to issue an order. We involve police a small number of times, and to be honest, in this last reporting period, we haven't involved police in any situations. We've resolved them internally. So I'll try to get some numbers for you, but don't have that today.
Thank you. I just had one small question, Rachel. In terms of the provincial funded facilities that have been put in place, and I was thinking specifically about the former Doubletree property, is there a commitment on the length of time that the province is providing that space? Is there is that going to be in perpetuity? Is there an end date? Do you have any sense of that property?
Both the Forum and the Bridge, which is the former Doubletree, have time limitations. I don't have the dates here, but planning is, definitely taking place, knowing that those facilities do have time limits on them. And it's, I believe the important focus is on permanent housing. So it does give more urgency again on the need to create permanent housing, which is better for folks in the long run. So it just does speak to the need to really have the province and the city and the federal government focus on permanent long-term housing.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Rachel? Commissioner Hinch?
Just to follow up on the chair's question, with the bridge, has there been any ask for extensions or anything? I know with the form is kind of different because they're doing a redevelopment, but has there been an extension on the bridge?
I can't speak to that. Really is a provincial
Okay.
service agreement. So
Okay.
I would have to let them answer that question.
All right, thank you.
All right. We are going to move on to 10.3. 10.3.1, the Board of Police Commissioners 25-26 Annual Report and Work Plan. And before I invite Mr. Bates to comment, could I have somebody place the motion on the floor, please? Thank you, Vice Chair Kent, noting that there's item number 1 and item number 2 to the motion.
Yes, thank you. I'll move that the Board of Police Commissioners for Halifax Regional Municipality, 1, approve the 2025-26 Annual Report and Work Plan dated April 16th, 2026. And number 2, the 2025-26 Annual Report and Work Plan to Regional Council for presentation and approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Hinch, for seconding that. All right, Mr. Bates, would you like to share a few comments on the?
Oh,
Oh.
sorry, I'm going to have to correct that. That's 26-27, is it not? Or is it 25-26?
It's actually the performance over the previous year, and then it's
So
labeled as,
the years are correct.
yeah, I had this discussion with our
Okay.
legislative assistant, and that is, that's the way the report's labeled. Yeah, but it is the 26-27 work plan. Pardon me?
It's just, it's the 25-26 report on the work plan and
And,
the 26-27
correct.
work plan going forward for
Yeah.
approval, right?
Yeah.
That is correct.
So we'll
Yeah.
have to change this a little bit.
That's how we've done it in past years, but yeah, I agree, it's confusing.
So can we put a 0.3 on it?
I would suggest, Vice Chair, that we just do a friendly amendment to put the date before work plan, that
Okay,
it's the 2026-27.
in
work
both
plan?
1 and 2?
Correct.
Okay, I'm open to that. How about my seconder? Okay, so moved. I just want to acknowledge really the work that our policy advisor, Josh Bates, has done on this with us as a board. This kind of effort and dedication to the strategic priorities and the work plans and all of the metrics that we have to put in place, et cetera, has certainly strengthened over the last number of years. And I think that he has played a big role in that. I want to congratulate him for that and acknowledge the effort and appreciation for the board. We're able to get through some heavy lifting really due to your ability to then just decide what we dropped and what we didn't and bring it back to us. So I really, really appreciate it. And I'd say good work. Thank you.
Mr. Bates, would you like to share some comments on the item?
Yeah, and thank you for those kind words, Vice Chair. I appreciate it. Josh Bates, Policing Policy Strategist. So producing a work plan and annual report is a requirement in Regional Council's police bylaw. And this, in fact, is the second year in a row that we produce these documents in accordance with the new bylaw, which was passed by Regional Council, I believe, in 2024 and recently approved by the Minister of Justice this past March. The annual report highlights many of the board's achievements over the past year, including adopting several new policies, initiating the strategic planning process, which we did just recently in March, also initiating police performance metrics and our community survey on policing, which is ongoing. I'd, of course, be happy to answer any questions you might have on the annual report, but I'll focus most of my comments on the second piece, which is the work plan. And you'll recall we discussed work plan priorities at a special meeting back in March with the support of my colleague, Kathy Collette, who is sitting just, I believe, right behind me. So following that meeting, work plan was produced for your consideration. That is divided into 6 buckets, and I'll name them here. The first, of course, is strategic planning. Next, we have policy development, reviewing the annual budgeting process, overseeing further integration between HRP and HRD, employee wellness, and enhancing the board's public engagement efforts. So the first bucket, strategic planning, will occupy much of the board's efforts over the coming year. And that process was already started with the appointment of a steering committee back in March. On policy development, the board has requested new policies in several areas, including sexual assault case review, which we discussed earlier today, and collaboration and interface with the care team, which I'm sure we're going to be hearing about more later during community safety's presentation. We also heard that reviewing the current budget process was a priority, including looking at implications of the new bylaw and increasing oversight of police-related spending that may reside in other business units. Next, we have integration, which includes several actions around endorsing the 4 pillars in the police transformation study, which we received a few years ago, providing direction on the upcoming CID managerial report, and formally adopting the jointly produced police performance metrics. On employee wellness, the main item is requesting a staff report and presentation related to results from various surveys and reports from past years. And lastly, I'll finish up on public engagement. On this bucket, we will continue delivering our community survey on policing, formalize a support framework with corporate communications, and begin implementing those engagement activities that are outlined in our new policy. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Bates? All right. We'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Bates.
Good job.
All right, we're going to move on to 10.3.2, which is the Public Safety Strategy Annual Report. Oh, sorry, we're moving on to 10.3.2, the Public Safety Strategy Annual Report, presentation by Amy Siciliano. Amy, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Andrea. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here today. My name is Amy Siciliano, and I'm the Public Safety Advisor with Community Safety, and I also lead the Research and Development Division in the Community Safety Business Unit. I'm delighted. It's a privilege to be here again and present an update on our municipality's public safety strategy, which sits within community safety. But we have a lot of collaborators, including police, across the organization and well into community. The key implementation leads include Lillian Ash, who is with us here. She leads Programs and Partnerships Division in Community Safety, and I just wanted to acknowledge that she's had 25 years of service. We celebrated today.
Nice.
It's an incredible accomplishment. Not marriage, it's work. Inside joke. Okay, so and also we collaborate with libraries, Parks and Recreation, HR, other branches of government, and as I mentioned, police. So I'm going to provide a high-level update on the work over the past year and a bit of a horizon on where we're going as we look to renew the public safety strategy, which is set to expire this year. So I'll start with a little bit of how we got here, the framework that guides our work, the action areas for our work, how we're measuring and monitoring impact, and then some examples of our achievements this past year, and I'll end with what's coming next. Okay, so the municipality quite a while ago recognized that prevention is core to its legislative mandate to develop and maintain safe and viable communities. And it has built the infrastructure to ensure that this approach to prevention can grow and thrive. This includes more than 15 years of foundational work and key milestones, including the Mayor's Roundtable and Claremont reports on prevention of violence in the HRM, which really highlighted a need for a more holistic, preventative, and community-led approach to public safety. It also emphasized the need to work upstream and address root causes of problems before they become police problems. Yeah, and then the inaugural public safety strategy, which Regional Council approved in 2018, really established a shared municipal vision for public safety across HRM. So it really allowed us to see, all of us to see our role in this work. So recognizing that, you know, from libraries to parks and recreation, police, community organizations, that we all play a role in creating safer communities. It also led to 2 cornerstone programs that I wanted to mention, because I know you interact, or the police interact with them both. One is our community mobilization teams. They were launched with the launch of the strategy, as well as the Safe City and Safe Public Spaces program that works to prevent sexual violence and harassment in our public spaces. So our current public safety strategy was unanimously approved by Regional Council back in 2023 with a mandate to advance community safety and build the structures that allow us to do this work with greater impact and with more involvement. So since Regional Council has approved the strategy, we've attracted over $5 million in external funding, as well as indirect funding through several pilot projects that we've been lucky enough to be selected to participate in that have been funded through Public Safety Canada. Okay, so our current strategy guides evidence-based investments in upstream, alternative, and holistic approaches to community safety and well-being. It frames a strategic approach to building capacity across sectors to support and grow HRM's community safety ecosystem. So when I say that, what I mean is that the municipality, when we work together on this strategy, are creating the social conditions that reduce risks for all residents, or what we consider primary prevention, building extra supports and capacity for communities or places more at risk for violence, which we would consider secondary prevention, and respond to incidents in a trauma-informed, community-centered way with the goal of promoting accountability, justice, healing, and recovery to prevent future harm. And that's tertiary prevention. There's 3 actions in the strategy, so 3 kind of buckets of in which we work. The first is community-led public safety leadership. So this is a continuation of some of the programs that we established with the first public safety strategy, and we had some strategic areas in which we wanted to grow. For instance, community mobilization teams moved into Spryfield under this strategy, have been working harder to involve young people or understand young people's needs, building out healing as a better part of the response to traumatic incidents. The second action area is a broader spectrum of responses to social issues and harms. And you know, the real significant achievement of launching CARE is under that area. And then the Center of Responsibility for Community Safety. So as I mentioned in the beginning, when we came to council with the strategy, really it was, we can do this, but we need a foundation from which to do it better, with more impact. And that supported the creation of a new community safety business unit and additional resources that are really allowing us to amplify our impact and move into areas that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So there's 14 actions within each of these action areas, and in the report, which I believe you have a copy of, and I'm not going to go into detail about all the actions, especially at the end of the day, but you know, you can see in your report under attachment A what we've done related to each one of those. and how it aligns with our monitoring and evaluation framework, which is what this slide is about. So we have an overarching theory of change in the public safety strategy that's guided by a monitoring and evaluation framework, and that provides key insights and common basis for us to be able to communicate progress toward outcomes for each action under the strategy, and helps us provide evidence for continuous learning and adaptation. You know, some of the work that we do, like CARE, for instance, is new. The community mobilization teams at the time were new, and it's important for us to understand what they're doing well, and what we might need to change to ensure that they're aligned with community needs and promoting safety outcomes. So there's 4 categories in the framework. The first is outcomes, which is really the change we aim to make over time. The second is activities. So that is, you know, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis with each program or service we're delivering. The next is program level measures. So I would consider these shorter term goals or outputs. So what the activities are kind of working to build something or working to change something, and we're tracking the activities in relation to those program level measures. When we have resources, extra resources, we do independent evaluations, and that work would fall under this category. We also pay attention to population level measures, and these are indicators of broader social change. I heard you receive information related to police statistics. This would be an example of something that we would be monitoring as well in terms of understanding what the trends are in the community, and how we can adapt our work to make sure that it aligns with what we're seeing in community. And I can give you an example. You know, over the past year, we've been looking at population level data, which is not only crime data, but there's many different ways that we can understand what's happening in our communities. So we did research with seniors across HRM to understand some of their concerns, and that's going to be used to inform our new strategy. We've been looking at data from community service providers on how behaviors related to violent extremism are showing up in our community. And that too is going to be used to, it's already informing the work we're doing, and it's going to be used to inform a more strategic approach in our next public safety strategy. Okay. So I'm going to move into some of our accomplishments, and I really want to start with the incredible work that Lillian's team and Delhi in particular have been doing in launching CARE. So we now have, last year, if you remember, I was up here saying we're going to do it, and you're like, when are we going to do it? Well, we did it, and it's launched, and it's amazing. And we're also doing an independent evaluation. So this is our non-police crisis response service that was launched in October. And what I'm showing you here is some results from the independent evaluation. So Claremont Center for Community Safety Research at Dalhousie is leading that. And they're looking at the data that's coming out of the program, so the administrative data. They're also doing a lot of surveys and interviews. They may have interviewed some folks in this room related to how they are understanding the service, what their expectations are for the service. And so what I can share, it's a draft report right now. We're just refining it. But what I can share is that, you know, most of the calls that CARE is receiving are related to persons in mental health crisis and well-being checks. And that's great. That shows us that that's what we wanted to see, the calls, the types of services, the call types, if you will, that police were getting, that we could move into for some of that. And we're seeing that show up in the administrative data. Let's see. And the other calls are related to homelessness and homelessness encampments. And I think that's also great because, you know, we're working toward integrating the AIM team, the after hours individualized, the response for homelessness. Sorry, Ashton,
You're almost there.
Thank you. After hours individualized engagement for folks sleeping rough. We're looking to integrate those two programs, and so CARE is already doing that work in responding to encampments. So that's another really great sign to see. Other calls that they're receiving, CARE includes calls related to suicidal ideation, and then information and referrals. And the evaluation will continue to look at the administrative data and help provide insights and ensure that it's on track for what we intended it to do. The survey and interview analysis also show overwhelming strong support for CARE and hope for expansion. So people are really excited about the program. They really hope to see it come to their community if it's not. Satisfaction with the training from CARE. So a part of this work involved interviewing the folks who are actually delivering the service. So that's 211 and Souls Harbor. And interviews were held with them to understand, is the training effective? Is it meeting the needs for what you're actually showing up for in community? And certainly that was validated by the survey responses that they saw. There is a desire for more communication and outreach to raise awareness about CARE and the service it provides. So I just want to say thanks also for inviting us here, because this is a part of that work to raise awareness of the service. You would know this, but I wanted to also share that, in your community policing survey that you're doing with Narrative Research, I just saw this is Q1 data, so 84%, but it's still high. I think the Q2 is 81%. So in the work that you're doing in surveying community, we have very strong support for the alternative model that we have established. So that's, Dele is here and can answer any more detailed questions. So I'll leave it at that. Another new initiative that is really taking off, and I'm really excited about it, is the Child, Youth, and Family Response Table. So you may be familiar with something like this in terms of, and years ago, I think RCMP started a hub type model here. I don't think it actually took off, but at least it was an idea. So it would be similar to a situation table or a hub model where service providers are coming together to identify cases, if you will, of this is focused on children and youth that are at risk of further harm, and trying to identify what is the best service provider that can help that person navigate to an off-ramp, if you will. So making sure that the service provider that can best serve that person can be connected with them. It's also a great place for education. So Sylvia Foon, who leads that work under Lillian, has been bringing in subject matter experts to help the service provider community learn together, which is a really great thing to do when you're learning with the folks that you're actually working with, but you're not in the same kind of location or organization. So you're sector learning together. Just yesterday, she brought in somebody from the Opportunities and Social Development, somebody from the province who works with young people who run away, habitual runaways, and had a wonderful discussion with the service providers about this issue, learned about what the province's role is, and talked about how they can think about a more coordinated approach. So I'm excited about this, and I see great things for this work in the future. So nonviolent crisis intervention, another highlight I just want to share, and I know that you've heard about this, and I'm excited that I think all of you, maybe save one, are registered for training next Monday, so don't forget. It's a wonderful training. We rolled it out in 2023 with an independent evaluation, and you saw that evaluation, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. The goal really is to help staff, elected officials, volunteers safely recognize and respond to crisis situations using a trauma-informed approach. This training is delivered in hospital settings and school settings. It's been evaluated in those settings and proven incredibly effective in meeting people where they're at with what they need to help them calm down, really, or de-escalate a situation. It's designed to build empathy, confidence, and safer interactions between our staff, our elected officials, our volunteers, residents, or whomever they're serving. And so when we launched it, because it's never been tested in a municipal context, we did an independent evaluation, again, with Claremont Center for Community Safety Research. and learned a lot, and also, you know, learned a lot in the sense that it helped us really refine the program as we were rolling it out, but we also learned that it's actually doing what we intend it to do. And you can see from some of the highlights here how it's making a difference, and how it's also, you know, improving staff well-being, which I think is a really exciting outcome. And our trainer, Tsong Chen, is working more closely now with the relatively new Jason, oh goodness, he's the director of Salon White. Thank you so much. Thank you. Director of well-being, to see where there's alignment so we could potentially amplify the work that they're both doing. It's part of a larger suite of trainings that we offer. And so I just wanted to highlight that this is one, but we also do mental health first aid. We do ASSIST, which is applied suicide intervention training. We're doing a new trauma-informed training as well. And we've trained some trainers with Lillian's team. And so we're really hoping to grow and amplify this work because we do see a need for it, and it is making a difference. Okay. And then I wanted to touch on Project Upstream. So one of the pilot projects that I mentioned earlier on is a project called Project Upstream. It's funded by the Canada Centre for, it's funded by Public Safety Canada, their division that is responsible for countering radicalization and extremist violence. So they've brought together 10 communities across Canada with the goal of strengthening multi-sectoral partnerships and also helping us understand how this issue is showing up and what we can do to prevent it. We have, I'll share that in a second. So we've learned a lot in this work. We've gathered folks together locally. We've done some training, and again, I'll speak about that in a second. But I just want to talk about some of the things we're learning through this project, and that, you know, online space is increasingly influential in the development and promotion of radicalization. Behaviors, not ideology, is what we should be focusing on. And by that, I mean radical ideas on their own are not problematic. And we can think of many examples of ideas that seemed radical at the time, like women in the workforce, or non-police crisis intervention, that are actually really good ideas, right? So we don't want to focus on the ideas, we want to focus on the behaviors. And that's actually, I wanted to emphasize it because what we're also seeing is increasing polarization in society. And when we start thinking about this issue in terms of like what's a good or bad ideology, we're actually contributing to the polarization. And we don't want to be doing that. That would actually not be working the way that we want to be working in this space. Technology is amplifying both the threats and the solutions. There's some really incredible work happening in Toronto and Edmonton around using tech interventions to help prevent violence from happening, and we're exploring those. And multi-sectoral response is 100% essential. So to that, you know, we've done some capacity building and awareness with 45 service providers. Police were part of that early gathering where we were really trying to learn together how this is showing up. We've done youth engagement. We are just wrapping up a series of focus groups with a bunch of different sectors. We just finished training with 65 participants in HRM, doing some also case management tools. 2 people are now part of a high-risk network of practitioners. So if somebody here is actually identified as being at high risk for acts of extremist violence, there's people locally that can support that person to get on an off-ramp. And yeah, I believe, you know, we've created a foundation for a community of engaged practitioners to promote safer trauma-informed violent prevention across the ecosystem, particularly in this space. But, you know, the prevention work here overlaps with the prevention work in a lot of different issues that we're tackling as community. So looking ahead, we are continuing to engage and consult to inform our strategy renewal and refine focus areas. And I've listed a few of them there. We will continue with CARE, of course, and the evaluation that accompanies that. There's a new exciting program called the Community Healing Project that will be launched soon under Lillian's team. And my team is leading a dashboard. We know that we need to communicate the impact of our work better. We know we're doing good work and we appreciate opportunities like this to come and share it, but we need more communication. And so we've been working with our ICT folks on a dashboard, which we hope to launch quite soon. And I will leave it there. And thank you so much again for the opportunity. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Do we have some questions for Amy? Commissioner Mancini.
Well, you know I'll have questions.
Of course.
Of course. Thank you, Chair. Dr. Siciliano, thank you for the work. I mean, for those of us who've been around for a while, this has come a long way from Ted's first public safety strategy. And truly, that was the foundation, right? And truly, truly amazing. So, Lillian, thank you for your service. I mean, you've been in a variety of roles since I've been here and excel and give 100% everyone. So thank you for your service to our municipality. I truly appreciate it. And she did only start when she was 12, but so it's good. Yeah. A few questions. Amazing the level of training that's being offered. I'm looking forward to Monday also, but that's truly amazing. The CARE team, excited about seeing its expansion. Are there any experiences that, without getting into deep in details, because the whole idea or part of the idea of creating the CARE team was not having this police response, were there experiences when we had to do things collectively with police in some calls? If you could speak to that also. You mentioned Souls Harbor. There was, there were some comments in the community and the media about Souls Harbor being a faith-based organization. Is that, any more on that, or is that just kind of gone away? And my last question is around, could you share with everybody about the decision that council's made around the sobering center? Because that's something that you spearhead every year, and I support it, of course, but there's a decision not to do that anymore. Maybe talk to why that we're not going ahead and any impact, negatively positive on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, to the Commissioner. I will defer to Dele to speak about the CARE service.
Thank you so much. I'm Dele Bello, Alternate Response Manager and I oversee the CARE service. With respect to police intervention, together with the CARE service.
So the question was about, when we started CARE, the concern was police were the only agency available to respond to these situations. So the concern that they were not always best to be equipped, so we created CARE. Have there been any experiences where police needed to be involved because there was either a threat of violence, whatever, and has there been any experience in that?
I will not say that police needed to be involved in the mobile team providing the service, but there had been on two occasions where, and this will be from launch in October till March 31st, the end of the fiscal year, where the person in crisis became violent and the mobile team withdrew and had to refer the case to the police, but stayed on scene till police arrived. And afterwards, they went back to provide service to the person because the person was then now calm and declined police service. We have also had situations where police had responded on scene and a person in crisis had declined police intervention and specifically requested for care. And we have had the police officers call the 211 to get the mobile team dispatched. And the mobile team had responded. Another case was police also responding, and the person needed to go to the hospital, but declined being transferred in the police vehicle. And the CARE mobile team was called on, and they transported the person and remained on scene with the person until the person in crisis was able to release the CARE mobile team that they were now good to go. So we have, we respond to co-response, maybe not, but supporting the police to provide service. Yeah.
So the cooperation work, those experiences were good experiences, if I'm hearing correctly?
Oh, for sure. We have enjoyed good cooperation and collaboration with police. Even in designing the integration of care with police, we have enjoyed good support.
Well, that's excellent here. And the other question was about the Souls Harbor. There was media attention around the fact that they're a faith-based organization. So has that been an issue with regard to the care of the people that's needed?
I'll say that we received those immediately the period that the service launched. We received 2 cases and then a third report from one of the 2 when at the time that they advertised for recruitment. But subsequently, there have been none. And when we have engagements, we have stressed that the care service is a municipal service and also reiterated the terms that guide the provision of the service. And though Souls Harbor is a faith-based organization, the care service is not a faith-based
Right.
organization.
That's the
It's a
distinction.
municipal service.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Amazing. And Dr. Siciliano, the other question was about the sobering center.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll just add, we've launched a client experience survey with CARE. So every time you receive service, you'll get a QR code and you can provide anonymous feedback. So I think to your point around concerns about the service provider, that's where that would show up. In the survey work that we've done so far, which hasn't been with folks experiencing care, but with the broader ecosystem, the concern was raised, but the idea of it was raised, but no concerns have surfaced in terms of the way that the service is being delivered. So that's positive. The sobering center, it's a great question, and yes, we did put a lot of work into that, and unfortunately weren't able to secure a space after.
Could you maybe explain to those that may
Oh,
not
I'm
be
so
aware of
sorry.
what the sobering center is?
Sure.
Was to be? If you wouldn't mind sharing that for those that may not know that are on the board.
So back in, I believe it was 2019, a motion came to the Board of Police Commissioners looking for an alternative to the prisoner care facility for folks who are experiencing public intoxication. It's not a criminal offense and it's offense under the Liquor Control Act. So it's not required that folks be incarcerated for this offense. And at the time, the admissions to the PCF, the prisoner care facility, were high and increasing. And so it seemed worth exploring. And in fact, council gave us direction to explore that. And the other option they asked us to explore was a managed alcohol program. So we did research, we came back, we recommended a sobering center as an alternative to the prisoner care facility for folks experiencing public intoxication, and partnered with Office of Addiction and Mental Health, who co-funded the model. We didn't recommend the managed alcohol program because that seemed much more aligned with a provincial mandate. And you know, we subsequently one was opened, and actually Ashton was the manager of that program. So great to have him on the team. So after several years of searching for space, securing a partner that wanted to run it, we were unsuccessful in locating one. I was just in conversation with my executive director today about how we can harvest or harness some of the capacity we have with CARE potentially to help transport folks to safer places to sober up. So that was always in the plan, but I think we have to focus more on how we can do that, those pathways. We know that there is options in community for people to sober up. Sometimes they go home. Police do that when it's safe for them to do so. And so that's a service that potentially we can step into more now that we know we don't have that option of the sobering center. Thanks for asking.
I appreciate that update. I think it's just important that, and there's still a bit of a gap there, though, is there not? I mean, you've identified that maybe CARE can play a role in that, but you know, is there still a concern of having folks that are intoxicated go to, you know, be locked up in that manner versus what we were trying to do with the sobering center?
The most recent data that I've seen, which is a couple of years old, but I'm sure police could speak to this, is that the numbers of folks admitted to the prisoner care facility for public intoxication has declined quite substantially. And I believe after COVID, particularly, there's been some changes that are, looking at how that facility was used for public intoxication and looking for alternatives already. So in some ways, we achieved what we wanted to achieve without that investment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Bezic-Escalera, or sorry, Vice Chair Kent.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but that's okay.
I
Thanks for your
caught
catch.
myself.
You did. Amy, thank you for coming in. It's always a delight to see you, and appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing. I can tell you, I'm so proud of the municipality and how the teams that they've brought together, the
Hear, hear.
leadership around our safety office, and the contribution that it's making to so many layers of the municipal services and the municipality's approach to some tough issues. And I think that you folks are really, really important in all of those. So thank you for doing that. Bill, you led the charge at the beginning, and I think that I just want to appreciate you as well, since you're sitting by me. I want to go right to care. I love this. I think by the sounds of it, you have landed certainly where I, as a member of this board, and I believe many others, could envision an alternative response model for this type of challenge in our community. So clearly, I think it's working. And can you remind me where we are now with what area within HRM are we offering this? Because I believe at the beginning, I think it was limited, and then now where is it? And if it's not across the municipality, what do you think it would take for us to get there? Because the municipality is large, the community, all communities have people experiencing distress from mental health scenarios, addictions, all of those layers. And I can tell you, even as a counselor, that it's quite regular for me to get calls with usually it's a caregiver or a parent or a guardian of some sort having someone that they have fear for in regards to suicide or idealized suicide and potential violence related to those scenarios. And while I know care is out there, I can't promote it as much because I am in a district that right now I don't believe is getting it. But so I'm sort of stuck in between. And I think the board, if there is a role that we can play in relation to helping the municipality see the worth, and for us to advocate on that on behalf of that program, I think that's a worthwhile consideration for the board. But I'd like to hear from you what you think you need to expand more. Don't be afraid to say it.
More money.
Yeah, well, if it's a good one.
Through you, Chair, to the Vice Chair. Thank you for the question, and thanks for the compliments. We appreciate it. So right now, CARE is in Dartmouth, so Woodlawn, Cole Harbor, downtown Dartmouth. It's expanded into north end of Halifax and including the waterfront district. I think in terms of what we're monitoring, Delhi is monitoring, so we have lots of eyes on how service uptake it relates to service expansion, because there's a sweet spot between you want to go everywhere, but then if you go too big, you won't actually be able to serve people because you'll be spending all your time in transit. If you remember, there's 2 vehicles with 2 staff in the vehicle. And so while we're 24/7, it's still limited by the number of resources we have to deploy. And so I think that, the intention is after the pilot, we will be in a better position to say, here's where we think we should be expanding. Here's where we think we could use additional resources. So when the service was launched, it was launched with a 2-year evaluation plan to pilot so we can learn from it and then, come back to council with the resource asks that we may need to expand it should it be proving to be successful. I will say that, if you're outside of the pilot area, one thing we learned in Ottawa is that this was also an issue for them in their pilot. And so a workaround is, if somebody can get into the pilot area, then they'd be eligible for service. And that's not always possible, but sometimes it is,
Yeah.
And so that's something, I guess, to be aware of. And yeah, I think
Okay,
that's.
well, I just quick follow up to that, and I completely understand what you're saying in regards to the population and the geography, right? But I still feel strongly that there might be a role that can be played. For instance, in the areas that you're concerned around getting to either now or when the money comes in, could we look at some form of community non-crisis intervention training where that would bring more people within the communities, because our communities are vast with volunteerism and groups and agencies who are already working with potentially some of these folks anyway. We have food security folks that are working with people from many different scenarios, and our local organizations, our Legions, our Lions Clubs, our Buffalo Clubs, they're all doing a lot. But one way that we could help expand the knowledge base on maybe how to de-escalate and how to recognize some of the things that otherwise we may not be aware of that would be around suicide and thoughts, and what is it they could do as a community person to help support that person. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility for the future.
If I may, what a great idea. And we are about to do that in Musquodoboit Harbor. So Song, through a connection that Rachel made, I think it may have been at a town hall for the RCMP, we have been connected with some great community volunteers, people who are active in their community, and Song is meeting with them to establish something similar to that where we bring people together and train them. So would love to talk about what that could look like, because I agree with you 100%. Like, CARE is one tool, but we have many other tools that are, established or under development that we can use to help broaden the spectrum of responses so that, we can provide the most appropriate service to folks when they are in crisis, because it's not always a police response that is needed.
Okay, so maybe we can catch up when I'm wearing my other hat, which is counselor.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalar.
Thanks, Chair. Commissioners Mancini and Commissioners Kent basically took the words of my mouth in terms of saying how happy I think we all are with how CARE has really developed over the last year. So congrats to that. I'll add to that. And Commissioner Kent asked most of my questions. I have one specific question about CARE. What is the response time like for the teams given as it is now?
Did you want to take that? I was reading your notes, so I just got all my questions from you. Not really.
Through the chair. The average wait time on the queue before the call gets answered by 211 is, I think, 12 seconds or so. And the average response time by the mobile team has been a little over 1 hour, like 82 seconds there, minutes thereabout.
That's helpful in understanding, the what you're needing to balance in terms of area of service and the team that you have and all that. So that's good to know. My last thing isn't so much a question as a comment. It's really good to hear from the community safety side. I really hope that whatever happens with the police system governance that we heard about from the province, that this board, even though it is formally a police governance board under the Police Act, we continue to integrate public safety, because this is really is one of those whole of municipality things that we all need to be together at the same table in this. So I hope that will continue, and I hope you'll continue to come to this board to give us your updates. So thanks very much.
Can I just say one word on that?
Commissioner Hinch.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to say that I agree with everything else the other commissioners have said as well. Is, you know, I actually went to a meeting a couple nights ago with a CMT Community Mobilization Team meeting, and CARE was there giving their presentation as well, and it was greatly presented and greatly appreciated. And it was 12 seconds. The response time was, for sure. My question is, Amy, because you already gave this presentation to council, and transit came up, and I know I asked a few questions regarding transit, but I'm wondering, is transit, as we are going to be in a course next Monday, is transit going to be receiving the same course with intervention? What is it?
Yeah, I got it. Through your chair to the commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Hinch. Transit has adopted this training as best as they can. So we've trained ferry mates, ferry service, the crew. Thank you.
Okay.
And some operators. One of the barriers that we've had with training transit operators is they have to take this training, which is not mandatory, on their off time, like vacation time. So Tsong recently met with the union board, and they are very excited about this training and the opportunity it presents to their union members in transit. And so we're working toward actually removing some of the barriers that have existed for us to train transit more wholly or completely, I would say. But they have been a supporter of their training, and certainly there's several transit members who have been trained. I don't have the numbers on me, but I can certainly pull those for you.
Okay.
If you're interested to know how many transit staff have been trained.
So when it comes to gender-based violence, how is that being, how I want to say, trained from besides the other types of violences? So can you let me know how that is?
Specifically related to
Yeah,
transit?
specifically transit and others, to be honest with you, business units.
Yeah, so we presented a report to Regional Council last week, I think, yes, when we presented the annual update on a recommendation report that we will embed gender-based violence as a focus area in our new public safety strategy. And I think that direction is going to help us work more collaboratively and intensely with several different business units to embed gender-based violence prevention work in their existing practices. I can't speak exactly about what that could look like or will look like, but it could look like, more public awareness in transit. It could look like more training, like I mentioned, in that presentation, we are doing bystander intervention training that's specifically related to gender-based violence. It's a program that's under development, and we'll launch it this year. And that's something that could be highly relevant for transit staff, among other municipal staff. So that's one thing definitely in the works that will be implemented and monitored in the new strategy. I could speak more about something specific related to that if you had something in mind.
Actually, no, I'm good with that for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kent, did you have a follow-up?
Just occurred to me as my colleague to my left was asking and mentioning the community safety or this public safety office and the safety organizations in the future, potentially the community safety. I attended NSFM on last week, late in the week, and the Minister of Justice was there. He was very much speaking to the changes coming up around governance boards and the encouragement that they're going to be placing on the other municipalities to develop community safety space within their municipal units. And he referenced the Halifax model. So I just
great.
want to say that to you so you are aware, and we're going to hold him to that, right?
Commissioner Hinch, did you have a follow-up question?
I also wanted to mention with regards to the Sobering Center. I mean, I know that's no longer a thing. It's going to be, or no longer a thing, but I want to know if there's any way that we can stop thinking about a Sobering Center and thinking about more of a recovery center for all sorts of things and not just, you know, alcohol or, you know, if that's a possibility. Because again, you know, like you said, the statistics are going down with that, and but I do believe that, you know, when it comes to, you know, addiction and things of that nature, that's going up when it comes to with drugs and everything of that nature. So I'm wondering if we can get away from that and come to another model that helps all encompassing is what I'm trying to get to there. That's all. I
Thank
don't
you.
know if you have a comment.
I mean, I can clearly see the role that we can play immediately is helping connect folks to existing recovery centers with care, and that we know that's a barrier. In fact, Rachel and I were talking about that this morning. Relationships matter first, and we are building those through Ashton's work, through care, building those with folks who are struggling with addiction and maybe, for instance, sleeping rough, and thus, you know, more likely to get a charge of public intoxication for whatever substance they're using.
Right.
And you know, when there's relationships behind an outreach to, hey, would you be interested in, you know, this recovery option? It's more successful in getting that person to the place that they you know, may choose to be at that time, I guess. So I think we can already play that role in terms of us running recovery centers. You know, back to the Sobering Center report and the direction from council that we got back in 2019, it may be out of our mandate. We have the managed alcohol program that the province runs. That might be considered a provincial mandate, but there's definitely a role for the municipality to play as a connector and alternative source of connecting people to the services that they need, which is a role sometimes that police are playing.
I just think about like there's services that are being provided now, like such things as the safe injection sites of that nature. But again, it's open from 8 till 4. You know, people with addictions is not 8 till 4. So if there's something that we can help, if we can service that way, I think it would be just a lot better. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can I ask a question? I think at the beginning, Rachel, you mentioned about IES integration. Is the care team now fully integrated with IES so that if a call comes into 911? Oh, okay. So those protocols have all been defined? Okay. I was curious, are we doing any joint response calls where there might be uncertainty and we're both sending, you know, a care team representative and a member of police, and they sort it out as to how best to address it?
I will say that Dele is going to talk about the IES process, but 211 is the dispatcher. They also do a screen, right? So we're already screening before we would send the mobile team. And I think it's important that people know that because it relates to the safety of the mobile team. If someone, for instance, has a weapon or is escalated to violence, then care would not be dispatched. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Rachel. So the IES integration is in place now. A call comes into 911, it's non-emergency, it's transferred to IES. And once the eligibility criteria has been fulfilled, it can be, and it's deemed eligible for the care service, then the call is transferred directly to 211 for the care service. In some cases, it may require a system checks. And the details of that call is then given to 211 for a callback. When a system check is not required at the police end, then it goes through a warm transfer to the police. On the other hand, if police have already on scene and the call is still deemed not to be a police call, the police officer have the option of calling to IAS to be connected to the care service, or they call directly to 211 themselves. If they call through IAS, then the officer can be provided an estimated time of arrival for the care service.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
I didn't want to forget that Commissioner Akinjoju asked me to share, he's watching online, that he thought it was an excellent presentation. So, there was no facilities, like if you dealt with someone who was intoxicated and need to be watched over, you know, in Halifax, we have some facilities for that. How do you deal with that in a rural area where you don't necessarily may or may not have the facility and the staff at the time to provide that type of oversight?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Wide variety of factors. Look for alternate means to manage the situation, responsible person, those sort of situations. Ultimately, transport to the prisoner care facility would be the last stop in the attempts, because there simply is, if there's no other options, that's the option to ensure safeties.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. I think we're good. Thank you very much for all those involved. A lot of great work, hard work, and thank you for the update. No motions. Item number, oh, no, sorry. Item 10.4.1, a Police Board Commissioner Strategic Plan Steering Committee update. And I believe those are going to be verbal remarks from Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Moore.
Great. Thank you, Chair. The steering committee for the strategic plan met on April 15th. The strategic committee is Commissioner Mancini, Chief McLean, Chief Superintendent Duff, and myself. We talked through the process, potential process. There was some very good information provided in a recent CAPG group around approaching strategic plans. I didn't want to bore, because I knew it was going to be a heavy day today at the council, but I think coming out of that, there seemed to be some consensus that, one, that we would look at creating an HRM policing strategic plan, an overarching, and I think the presentation by the province today was apropos in timing, because both 55.3 and 68.3 are very, very similar in relation to priorities, objectives, and goals for both agencies. I know there's some mechanisms in there that are a little different, but quite frankly, the general direction of policing and HRM could be articulated in that, and then certainly each agency may operationalize that differently, which is well within their purview, but that was kind of the idea. What we're proposing potentially is a target date for the plan is December of 2026. So in a high level, we would look to do the environmental scanning, which would be basically a paper-based exercise to take those excerpts out for the board to get, you know, a smaller package of information to you over the summer. A community engagement will be planned out and executed in the time period around September-ish. And then looking at a scheduled board session where really the rubber, I think, meets the road, where the board will have all that information in October-ish kind of time, and then allowing some time for the final writing of the report and getting it back here for December. That's the proposed kind of timeline. Kathy Collette was with us. I've been able to secure Kathy Collette to help us with that process all the way along, including doing some of the writing. So that doesn't preclude, as we talked about here during the board session, if we feel as we're planning that we need to have a facilitator, we'll certainly look to bring that piece to bear. The other thing in relation to the timing, and this is a bit self-serving on my behalf, the corporate HRM Regional Council plan is a 26 to 2030 plan. You just heard that the public safety plan is going to be redone on probably a 3-year basis from a 27 to 2030 plan. And my suggestion would be is that we potentially look at a 3-year plan for a time. And what that would allow us to do is potentially at that 3-year time is move us to the next level in public safety planning across the board. I don't think we're at a point right now of trying to merge those 3 plans at this point. Would just be, I think it's too much of a heavy lift, in my humble opinion. But if we're able to co-create those plans as we move forward, we can continue to create those cross-pollination points as we go. And that would include coming out of the regional council plan, things like the traffic safety plan, the transit plan, safety plan, and some of those other pieces as we go. So really, that was the concept we came out of the meeting, and I'll look to Commissioner Mancini to see if I missed anything on that. But if the board has any comments, or the board or if they're happy with that kind of general direct, we will go back and put more meat on the bone and come back with more of a tighter timeline and plan, and we can start to move this thing forward. My comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Any questions for Commissioner Moore? I just had one, Commissioner Moore. I can't argue or disagree with the idea of a 3-year to align with others, but also, wasn't it the intention that our plan is informed by the municipality's plan? And the overlap of these might not be ideal, that we might want it to run a little longer until that new plan?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess what I wanted to try to socialize was the concept of trying to get into a timing piece that, so you're absolutely right. There is that 1 year extra, because that would be the end of the first year of a potentially new council, if I do my math right. So that would align us to be able to be in that space. So if it moves a little bit, but yes, I think the regional council strategic plan should inform where the board potentially going, and in concert with the other public safety plans.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to item number 13. Can I get a motion to move in camera? Oh, is it? Wasn't it? No, but for the next meeting.
That is correct.
Oh, I see. Okay,
So
thank
if
you.
if any
Right.
commissioners want to bring that information
Yeah.
item forward,
Yeah,
we can do that. They can do that now
okay.
if they wish.
I'll test the minutes if you like.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the private and confidential.
Mancini and Vice Chairs Kent, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carried unanimously. And I'd like to move to bring forward the information report to the June meeting. All right, so any item number 14, I guess, notices of motion? Any notices of motion? Madam Clerk, no notices of motion? Okay. Yeah. All right. Barring no announcements, date of the next meeting is June 3rd. And item number 16, we'll ask for a mover for adjournment. Thank you, Commissioner Mancini. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Very